Better Call Saul, the successor to the most critically acclaimed show of all time, Breaking Bad. Today I'm going to be ranking every single episode of the show from worst to best. I uploaded a Breaking Bad ranking a few months ago if you're interested in that, and shout out to anyone who watched that and supported it, because it gave me around 100 subs in the span of a month. To rehash some things from my intro in that video, there are really no lackluster episodes in this show. There's not a single episode that I wouldn't consider at least good. Some are just better than the others. And of course, spoilers for Better Call Saul, Breaking Bad, maybe El Camino, I don't know. And that's about it. Here's all 63 episodes of Better Call Saul ranked from worst to best. Also, I promise my friend isn't coming back. He's not coming back. Please just leave me alone, please. Number 63. Talk. I know I got some comments in my Breaking Bad video talking about how I may have had little to say about some of the earlier episodes, and I have been trying to fix that with this video, but there are really just some episodes where there isn't anything to say, and this is one of them. Talk is probably one of the least eventful episodes in the entire show. There's even a fucking shootout between Nacho and the Salamanca cousins versus some rival meth dealers, which is cool I guess, but it really doesn't mean much to the overall plot at all. Jimmy finally takes a job opportunity at a phone store, which is cool I guess, but nobody comes to the shop, so every scene of him in there is just basically him doing nothing. Kim decides to watch a bunch of cases at the courthouse for no reason at all, which pisses the judge off. Then we have Mike's subplot, which is the main focus of the episode, and it kinda sucks. Mike catches on to someone lying at the support group, and he decides to call him out, which makes him leave. The scene is just really awkward to me, and I also don't get the point of it either, besides to just end the support group scenes. And if that's the case, then I'm not exactly complaining, but it doesn't mean it's a good scene. But this episode is still good overall, just a lot less exciting than pretty much every other episode of the show. Number 62, Mabel. Definitely the weakest start to a season. After the crazy cliffhanger that's Chuck recording Jimmy admitting to changing the numbers, this episode doesn't really elaborate on it too much. Chuck shows the tape to Howard and has a plan to use it, but this isn't even expanded on until the next episode. Besides using Ernie, which is the biggest betrayal of all time.
Changed 1261 to 1216. It was me.
Turn that off! Turn it off!
It all went
Turn it off!
exactly.
You did not hear that!
Nothing's really happening with Jimmy, besides the jet pilot that he tricked a few weeks ago coming to his office to confront him, which isn't the most fun scene to watch. Now, the reason that this is one of the lowest rated episodes isn't really because of any of this, but because of the Mike subplot. Before Mike gets involved with Gus, I prefer his subplot in basically every episode over Jimmy's, but the arc of him trying to catch Gus is probably the worst in the whole show. Gus is one of my favorite characters in the Breaking Bad universe, but there doesn't have to be this much anticipation for him. Like the 6-minute long scene of Mike taking his car apart, and the scene of him looking outside his window at 3 a.m. They're not necessary. Well, maybe they're necessary, but they don't have to be this drawn out. I get that this series likes to have an even split between the law and cartel subplots for most of the time, but especially when the stakes are so high on Jimmy's side, they could have easily just made this a much more Jimmy-centered episode, even though it already is. Still a decent episode, I just don't really enjoy the Mike stuff too much. Number 61, Axe and Grind. The final episode in preparation of Plan and Execution, and it's probably the worst one. Planning to take down Howard while not revealing what the plan is gets a little tiring after 3 episodes, but at least there's some great scenes to make up for this. The cold open is another flashback to Kim as a teenager and her mom being an asshole, which makes everything that's going on make a lot more sense. Kim and Jimmy don't really do anything in this episode. Kim gets invited to be on some committee or something by Cliff, but it contradicts with D-Day, so Jimmy has to do it by himself. The night before this, they go on a date to a supposed beach, but it's revealed that it's just outside of the HHM meeting room, so that was kinda wild. As Kim is driving to her meeting the next day, Jimmy's buying some alcohol and sees the guy that they impersonated for the scheme has a broken arm. This messes with the scheme completely, and Jimmy calls Kim to tell her about this and call it off, but she decides to go back home and fix it instead of going to the meeting, which the episode ends on. This was originally my least favorite episode of the show on first viewing, and while it's still relatively low on my list, I think actually knowing what happens in the next episode definitely increased its score a little bit, because the hints to some shit that I had to watch a whole other episode to understand were a bit annoying on first viewing. The other reason why this isn't the lowest rated episode is because of the one scene Lalo has in this episode where he tracks down Casper in the woods, who is one of Werner's men. Casper instantly becomes suspicious of Lalo and starts running away with an axe when Lalo gets closer. Lalo follows him to some sort of shed and looks for him, that gets stabbed with the axe by Casper out of nowhere. Lalo seems genuinely hurt at first and starts spilling info to Casper on why he's there, and he takes a card out he took from Marguerite to show him. As Casper looks at it, Lalo slashes his face with the card, steals the axe from him, then cuts his foot off. I like how there's barely anything interesting going on in this whole episode, and then we randomly get this cool ass action scene like halfway through. Still really solid, but one of the show's weaker in my opinion. Number 60. Switch. Not the strongest start to season 2, but a necessary one. Switch continues right where Marco left off, showing Jimmy denying his Davis and Maine job opportunity, which confuses everyone. Jimmy then goes to a resort and chills in the pool all day instead of doing anything. Kim comes to ask him what's up, and he reveals that he has quit the law and wants to be himself, which is symbolized by Marco's ring. She tries convincing him that he's a great lawyer and shouldn't throw this away, but Jimmy doesn't listen and decides to scam Ken Wins to show her what he means. Ken Wins returning is a nice callback, and Victor with a K and Giselle's scam of him is just like a Slip and Jimmy scam. This is the real start of Kim and Jimmy's relationship that is the main point for the rest of the show. There were hints hints in season 1 that they were possibly more than friends at certain points, but this episode confirms that they have feelings for each other, and I get sad just thinking of what their relationship comes to in the later seasons. But I still prefer the Mike subplot of this episode. Well, I guess the Price subplot. Mike is in one scene in this episode where he says he won't go into Price's school bus for 6-year-old pimps, which makes Price fire him. This of course does not backfire at all, and all of Price's extremely valuable baseball cards have been stolen, alongside some unimportant cash. The cops are obviously suspicious, and this leads into an investigation in the next episode. Price is such an amazing side character, which is why I prefer his subplot. Every scene he's in is just so funny and entertaining. Still a solid episode besides that though. Number 59, 50% Off. 50% Off is another one of the early season 5 episodes that mainly focuses on Jimmy/Saul, but it doesn't have as much going for it as the other episodes. This episode ends right where 501 left off, where Jimmy made his 50% off for all nonviolent crimes discount, and 2 of the guys that received the discount decided to go on a crime spree for like 2 days straight in the cold open, which is pretty entertaining. This episode focuses on Jimmy trying to maximize his earning. He even purposefully breaks down an elevator so he can get his deals with Suzanne done. Mike also has one of his worst subplots in a while, where he's still fucked up about Werner and decides to yell at Kaylee for asking questions about Maddie, which makes her cry and go to her room. Not a very good scene. The cartel stuff is where this episode's at, though. Nacho gets kidnapped by Gus's men in the beginning of the episode, and he's taken to the parking lot of his dad's shop and is forced to watch Victor go in there with a gun. Gus then comes to the truck and tells Nacho that he has to find a way to gain Lalo's trust so Gus can deal with him. There are definitely times you can empathize with Gus in this show, but there's lots of times where he crosses lines, and this is definitely one of them. Like, holy shit, you're gonna scare Nacho to death before he's able to gain Lalo's trust. Later on, all the guys are playing poker, and Lalo gives Domingo the Ocho Loco, aka Crazy 8 nickname. Domingo then gets a call about a problem at his selling territory, so he goes there to try to fix it, but gets busted in a pretty funny way. The other guys there flee to Nacho and Lalo's truck, but they leave the meth in the building. So Nacho decides to do some Minecraft parkour and get the meth before the cops get to it to gain Lalo's trust. Sometimes the completely unrealistic shit like this is what makes the show so good. It's just so entertaining. Not one of the better season 5 episodes, but still great. Number 58, Amarillo. After season 2 episode 2 being an episode mostly focused on Price and ending his subplot, we get a very Jimmy-centered episode here. This episode's mainly about Jimmy trying to deal with his client outreach at Davis and Maine. The cold open sees Jimmy soliciting a bunch of elders on a sandpiper bus to hire Davis and Maine, since there's barely any people hiring them normally. This is very successful, but Chuck is suspicious of solicitation claims, and Kim gets mad at Jimmy, so he agrees to find a new way to get more clients. After some more failed attempts, Jimmy thinks of the best idea, a commercial. He proposes this idea to Cliff, who doesn't fully agree yet, but tells Jimmy to discuss it with him next week. This is obviously too much time for Jimmy, so he gets the camera crew and one of his former clients to record a commercial with them. Seeing the camera crew is definitely the highlight of the episode. Anyways, Jimmy decides to casually air this commercial the next day with the permission of absolutely nobody. While it is incredibly successful, Cliff is not happy. On Mike's side, he moves Stacy and Kaylee out of the neighborhood because Stacy's paranoid about gunshots she's been hearing, even though it's just falling newspapers. Mike also gets a new job opportunity from Nacho, which leads to a much better episode. Still very solid though. Number 57, Smoke. This episode really just serves the purpose to deal with the aftermath of Chuck's death. Jimmy and Kim get a call from Howard and they immediately drive to Chuck's house. Jimmy seeing Chuck's burnt down house is really sad, and he's able to put together the puzzle pieces that Chuck killed himself. As the week goes by, Jimmy emotionlessly grieves over Chuck's death. You can definitely tell he has some regret for what happened. Chuck's funeral happens, and it's nice to see some characters return like Rich and Cliff, and it sucks to see Rebecca bawling over Chuck. Howard then confesses to Jimmy and Kim after the funeral that he thinks Chuck killed himself over the fact that Howard pushed him out of HHM. And Jimmy decides to agree that Howard should be blamed for Chuck. Then he happily feeds the fish while whistling, which reminded me of the scene in Breaking Bad when Walt tells Jesse that he can go home after they talked about Drew Sharp. Then he proceeds to happily whistle. But these aren't actually similar scenes. Walt was doing that because he's a narcissistic, sociopathic jackass. Jimmy is just in denial and decides to place the blame on Howard. Nothing too crazy is really happening down at Madrigal with Mike, and Nacho has a conversation with Bolsa about Hector. Nacho also throws his pills into the river, and Victor sees him do this, which is a nice cliffhanger for what's about to happen. Still a very solid episode. Number 56, Bali High. While this episode is definitely more centered around Jimmy and Kim, the Mike stuff still blows it out of the water, which is a common theme of the first couple seasons in my opinion. On Kim's side, she's offered a job as striker in Coakley, and she really considers it because her position at HHM is not its highest right now. On Jimmy's side, it's mainly just more symbolism of him not fitting in at Davis and Maine, like with the cup holder and him going to sleep at the nail salon instead of his apartment. Then we have the Mike scenes. Hector desperately wants Mike to tell the DA that Tuco's gun was his, so he scares him by getting Arturo to wait outside of Mike's house. Arturo then breaks into Mike's house later that day with another guy, but Mike is 2 steps ahead of them and beats their asses. It seems like Mike is fine after this until he's watching Kaylee in the pool, and the Salamanca twins make their first appearance by pointing finger guns at Mike from a distance. The Salamanca twins have always been scary, and this is no exception. Scaring Mike is not easy, and they were able to do it. Not even Hector is able to scare Mike in the next scene though, where they meet up at a closed restaurant and discuss the Tuca situation. Hector tries to get out of it by not paying anything, but Mike is able to bargain up to 50 grand. He then pays 25 of this to Nacho because Tuca will be let out sooner than he anticipated. There's not much to say with this one, just really solid. Number 55, Black and Blue. Another one of the early to mid season 6 episodes that are between two very high points of the show, so not much is really happening, but it's Better Call Saul, so the episode is still great. This episode shows Howard finding out about Jimmy and Kim's plans against him even more, because Cliff asks him about the car thing from his lunch with Kim, and Howard's able to put together the puzzle pieces. He calls Jimmy pretending to be a client and asks him to meet him at a boxing ring. Then when Jimmy gets there, he asks him to settle their differences and fight. Jimmy almost declines, but he ultimately gives in and we get one of the weirdest scenes in the entire show. Like, this scene just does not feel like it's in Better Call Saul. Even with something like Bagman, which has scenes that are a lot similar to Breaking Bad, it still feels like it's Better Call Saul, but for some reason I don't get that from this. It's not a bad scene, it's still entertaining seeing Howard and Jimmy punch each other, but something about it's just weird. At the end of the scene, Howard talks to a man that was waiting outside who is presumably a private investigator he hired for Jimmy. Speaking of Jimmy, he finally buys the Saul Goodman office and calls Francesca to become a secretary again. When she gets there, the office has dirty walls and a toilet in the middle with no lights and a line of criminals outside, so she tries leaving, but good old Saul is able to bribe her to stay. A very funny scene. Nothing's really happening with Gus, he's still being paranoid about Lalo. But speaking of Lalo, this is the first time we see him since 601, and he's in Germany? At first this seems very confusing until he starts flirting with a woman at a bar named Margaret, and it's revealed that she's Werner's widow. Lalo is very charismatic with her the whole night and is able to keep a conversation with her all the way till they walk to her house. After Margaret leaves for work the next morning, Lalo breaks in to look at all of Werner's blueprints for his work to get some info on Gus's lab, and he's able to escape right before Margaret comes in. Lalo definitely carries this episode even though he's in like 2 scenes, but I still really like the episode in general. Number 54, Marco. Definitely a strange way to end season 1, and my personal least favorite of the season, but it's still great for character development. Jimmy goes back to Chicago after taking Howard's deal, then meets his old friend Marco at a bar and they rekindle their relationship. Slip and Jimmy comes back and they spend the week pulling off scams on random people at the bar. They both have a lot of fun doing this, but Jimmy needs to go back to Albuquerque. Marco tells Jimmy that this is the only thing that brings him happiness, so they try to pull off one final scam, the watch scam. But Marco doesn't wake up during the scam, which concerns Jimmy, and he calls the police. Marco tells Jimmy that this is the best week of his life, and he dies. Even though we barely knew Marco, this was still a sad death and a sad episode in general. Jimmy then gets a new job opportunity, but turns back when he thinks about who he really is, Slip and Jimmy. This does make sense to end with since it leads into the beginning of season 2 with Jimmy giving up the law, but it's not the biggest or most satisfying ending they could have done. Still an entertaining episode. Number 53, Something Beautiful. This isn't the most eventful episode, but it's still a very entertaining one. Now, we definitely need to talk about the cold open. The fact that this episode's called Something Beautiful and the cold open is Nacho getting shot multiple times after watching Arturo's frozen dead corpse get shot in the head is very ironic. And this is probably the highlight of the episode. Nacho gets taken to Caldera later on by the Salamanca twins, and one of them decides to donate Nacho some blood, which is cool. Anyways, on to what this episode's actually about. Jimmy robbing the copy store. In his weird-ass interview from the previous episode, he was examining the owners of collectibles and realized he had a figure worth thousands. Jimmy tells Mike about this and asks him to rob the store, but he denies because the owners have done nothing wrong. Jimmy then has to go to Caldera and get a robber up for the job through him. The robber goes into the store and switches the figures, but he realizes that the owner is still there, so he hides. The owner then calls his wife and begs her to let him back in the house, which is insane, and once she hangs up on him, he orders a pizza. The look of disappointment on the robber's face is what makes this scene for me. It's so funny for no reason. The robber calls Jimmy and tells him to get him out of there, so Jimmy pushes the owner's car down the parking lot, which is successful. Gotta love a good old Slip and Jimmy scheme. Jimmy also finally reads Chuck's letter to him, which makes Kim cry, but does not make Jimmy react in the slightest, which is definitely an interesting scene. It's at least nice knowing that Chuck didn't actually mean anything in the final interaction he had with Jimmy. Number 52, Alpine Shepherd Boy. This episode's a prime example of why some people don't like Better Call Saul, especially since it's the lowest rated episode in the whole show. There's just not a lot going on, especially for an episode in the middle of the season that comes right before an episode like 5-0. But if you have an attention span longer than 5 seconds, you can actually get through episodes like these and recognize the greatness of them. After Chuck steals his neighbor's newspaper, the cops show up and break into his house, which completely fucks with his electricity allergy, and he's admitted to the hospital. But before Jimmy finds out about this, he does some work with his newly earned clients. He meets a crazy rich guy, then meets up with the sex toilet guy, which is probably one of the funniest scenes in the whole show. I especially love Jimmy's line at the end.
Hey, you know what? I hope you do make a fortune, because Chandler's gonna need it to help pay for his therapy.
We're then introduced to Mrs. Strauss in a great scene where Jimmy starts his elder law adventure. Then Jimmy and Kim find out about Chuck and rush to the hospital. There's a lot of foreshadowing in this scene. First, when the doctor turns the machine back on and Chuck doesn't notice, which technically isn't even foreshadowing if you think about it. The scene right here literally tells us that Chuck's allergy is not real, and I only realized this scene showed this once I finished Better Call Saul for the first time and watched videos about it that pointed this out. The doctor also poses the risk of Chuck burning his house down, which, yeah. Then the final few minutes of the episode are dedicated to Mike, which is the first solo Mike stuff we get in the whole show. It's just a lead up to the next episode, which is a full-on Mike episode, but it's still pretty cool. Number 51, Hit and Run. Hit and Run is a very solid continuation of the Howard's career setback arc, with easily the best scheme against him yet. Jimmy dresses up as Howard and looks stupid as fuck, which makes it funny. Then while Howard is in therapy, he uses the duplicate keys Huel made him last episode and gets into Howard's car. He picks up Wendy, who we haven't seen since like Breaking Bad season 3, then throws her out of the car while screaming at her, coincidentally right where Kim is having lunch with Cliff, who notices that it's Howard. Jimmy gets back to the parking lot, but someone took his spot, so he has to manually move the patients only sign to where he's now parked, and is able to get out of there right before Howard gets to his car. The scheme's a lot more fun than their previous ones, and we get the return of Wendy, which is cool. This definitely carries the episode. Kim feels like she's being followed though, and once she spots the same car twice, she walks up to it and threatens the driver that she'll call authorities because she feels threatened. Then they drive away. The next time Kim goes to the El Camino restaurant where she spotted the car, Mike is there and asks her to sit down and have a talk with him. And this marks the first time Mike and Kim ever interact on screen. Mike basically tells Kim that he's been ordering guys to follow her and Jimmy because of Lalo Salamanca, and indicating to her that he's still alive. Kim asks why he didn't tell Jimmy, and he says that Kim is made of tougher skin. This is another half measure by Mike, since this ultimately leads to some not so great things in a few episodes, but I understand where he's coming from. Then in the final scene, Kim meets up with Jimmy at an office that Jimmy wants to buy, and this is the infamous Saul Goodman office that we all know from Breaking Bad. But of course, the highlight of this scene is the callback to Taco Cabeza, which made me laugh thinking about the Breaking Bad scene about Taco Cabeza, which made me look up if Taco Cabeza was a real place, which led me to r/OkBuddy chicanery, where I spent half an hour at midnight scrolling through threads of Reddit and cell spamming Kim talking about Taco Cabeza gifts, and I couldn't stop laughing because it was 12 a.m. So that was 30 minutes of my life that I'll never get back. Yeah, anyways, cool episode. Number 50, Off-Brand. Being the episode after Chicanery, Off-Brand has a lot to live up to, and it does a decently well job at it. Obviously, after a conclusion like Jimmy getting disbarred for a year, there's not much that can happen, but it's still really great. The cold open shows Domingo being short on his payment, and Nacho lets him go, but Hector convinces him to teach Domingo a lesson, so Nacho beats him up. This is a very disturbing scene, and Nacho is also distraught about it. Later on in the episode, Hector tries convincing Nacho to distribute drugs through his dad's shop, which Nacho is not okay with. Then Hector drops a pill, and Nacho starts getting ideas of how to kill another Salamanca. Now to what this episode's really about, Jimmy. The episode starts off with Kim's final statement regarding the hearing, since we never actually got the conclusion to it in Chicanery, and it's an amazing speech. The editing is yet again great as well. The next day, Jimmy has to call all of his clients to tell them that he's taking a year-long break from the law, which is shown by a great montage. Jimmy then has to make new commercials so he doesn't lose money from the 4 slots he already bought, so he gathers together the greatest side characters in fiction and goes around town asking people if they would like to do a commercial. When this doesn't work, the makeup girl suggests he makes his own commercial, so Jimmy decides to make a commercial about making commercials. The scene is of course great like every camera crew scene, but we don't actually get to see the commercial until the end of the episode where he shows Kim, and Jimmy uses the name Saul Goodman. This isn't the first use of Saul Goodman, since he used to use it back in the Slip and Jimmy days, but it's the first real appearance of it, and it definitely starts this non-lawyer arc very well. Very well executed episode for being the follow-up to Chicanery. Number 49, Cobbler. This episode continues and mostly focuses on the subplot of Price getting his baseball cards stolen. Price ends up going to the police station to talk to them, but Mike convinces him not to and says that he'll find his baseball cards. Mike knows that it was Nacho, so he confronts him by going to his dad's shop. They make a deal, and Nacho meets up with Price to give him the money and baseball cards back, and we get his iconic...
You think I'd be caught dead driving that thing? It looks like a school bus for 6-year-old pimps.
Price still has to talk to the police though, so Mike gets Jimmy to be his lawyer, and he makes up a crazy story that somehow works. The squat cobbler. He tells the police that Price was hiding videos of him sitting in pies, and that's what was stolen instead of money. Not only is this really funny, they also somehow believe this, and Jimmy makes a fake squat cobbler video with Price to further increase his chances of getting let free. But Kim is very disappointed in Jimmy for tampering with evidence, which is not how she'll feel about the law a few seasons from now, but at least we can appreciate moral Kim while she lasts. The rest of this episode is just Jimmy getting settled in at Davison, Maine, nothing crazy. Another very entertaining Price subplot though. Number 48, Inflatable. Inflatable is definitely a turning point for the show, and it does a great job at it. The cold open is very important to this episode. It shows a flashback to when Jimmy was a kid working at his dad's shop, and a man walks in asking Jimmy's dad for money, and using a fake story as an excuse. Jimmy's dad is very gullible, so he gives him the money, but Jimmy sees right through him, and while Jimmy is alone with the man, he says this.
There are wolves and sheep in this world, kid. Wolves and sheep. Figure out which one you're gonna be.
This one sentence is very connected to this episode, since this is the episode mainly about Jimmy realizing who he really is and what he enjoys doing in his life. He asks Kim to start a firm with him so they can be their own bosses, but Kim denies this because Jimmy admits that he would be a colorful lawyer. Jimmy then tries leaving Davison, Maine, but when Omar tells him that he won't get his bonus, Jimmy decides to do anything that he can to get fired while still receiving his check, which leads to one of the best montages in the whole show. Cliff finally gives in and fires Jimmy, and he has an iconic line.
Hey Cliff, for what it's worth, I think you're a good guy. For what it's worth, I think you're an asshole.
Cliff is one of the many characters in the show that just doesn't deserve anything that's happened to them. They're just trying to do their job and get caught up in Jimmy's shenanigans. You've got to feel bad for the guy. Jimmy moves back into the nail salon where his real home is, and he gets help from Omar having the Coca-Cola desk there as well. Hold up, we need to take a second to appreciate Omar. Easily one of the coolest people in this entire show. Anyways, Kim does her interview with Schweiker and Coakley, which seems to go well, but she also realizes that she wants to be her own boss, so she goes to the nail salon and tells Jimmy that she isn't taking the job, then proposes an idea to him. They share an office while being two separate firms, and the episode ends with Jimmy deciding on this proposition. She obviously ends up agreeing to this, which changes the show a lot. Alongside multiple great scenes, this is a really great episode overall. Number 47, Expenses. Expenses continues the post-chicanery plotline where Jimmy's making commercials for money, and I think it's superior to Off-Brand. First, let's talk about the Mike stuff. We see the return of my favorite side character in the whole show, Price, which I was so happy to see. Nacho breaks into his house again and tells Price to get empty pills for him. Price then goes to the booth Mike works at and asks him to work a security job for the trade, which Mike declines. This is a great scene overall, but my favorite part is when Mike walks up to Price's car and he's playing a baseball video game while waiting. Mike later takes this back though, and the trade with Nacho happens, where Mike gives some advice to Nacho about dealing with Hector. Meanwhile, Jimmy continues to try and get commercials done for other people, which isn't getting him much profit. While we're not getting anything law-related in this part of the show, it's still entertaining seeing the camera crew and their wacky shenanigans every episode. But the real highlight of this episode is the final scene, where Jimmy tries to get a refund on his insurance. When he's denied the refund, he starts crying right there and talks about how shitty his life has been recently. I can definitely see this being legit, since Jimmy has definitely been struggling recently, but then he brings up Chuck and talks about how he's mentally ill and went on a rant at the bar hearing, which the worker writes down, basically meaning that Chuck's insurance is getting decreased. Jimmy's so incredibly fucked up for this, and this scene is just amazing to watch. I know Chuck has done so much bad shit to Jimmy, but I think outsmarting him at the hearing and triggering him to go on that crazy rant was easily enough revenge. This is just unnecessary, but it fits so well into Jimmy's character. Number 46, Slip. I wouldn't say this episode's filled with many standout moments, but it's a really great episode overall. Let's get Jimmy's subplot out of the way first, because I actually think it's the weaker one here. Jimmy continues to try to sell commercial spots, and he goes back to the guys that gave a free commercial before they finished the deal. But they're assholes, so they deny continuing the deal, so Jimmy decides to pull a Slip and Jimmy stunt and falls on a drumstick so he can get insurance from the guys. Later on, Jimmy continues his community service and sees a man that's getting denied access to leave, even though he's claiming that his daughter with pneumonia is in the hospital. Jimmy knows this guy's lying, but he tells him that if he pays him $700, then he'll get the guy out of there. Jimmy proceeds to lay down, then when he's confronted by the agent, Jimmy goes full lawyer mode on him. This scares the agent, and he lets the drug dealer go and allows Jimmy to lay down, and Jimmy gets his $700. This fuels Jimmy into getting money in more shady ways, which continues in the next episode. Meanwhile, Kim goes to lunch with Kevin and Paige, but Howard's also there and he greets everyone. Kim decides to write Howard a $13,000 check, which he later on rips in half in her face while telling her that she's the reason that Howard now has to convince all of his clients to stay with HHM. Kim responds with some cold-ass lines, then gets in the car and leaves. Then we get to the best part of the episode, Nacho. He makes the alternate pills for Hector, then pops the air conditioning pipe so Hector's restaurant's hot the next day, which will make Hector take his coat off. Then we get to the scene of Nacho actually switching the pills, which is easily the best scene of the episode. It's so intense but so satisfying when Nacho pulls it off. Really entertaining episode. Number 45, Rebecca. I don't understand why this is the lowest rated episode of the show. There might not be a lot happening, but it's still a very entertaining episode front to back. The cold open of this episode is probably the best scene. We get the introduction of Chuck's ex-wife, Rebecca. The scene is a flashback to when they were married and when Jimmy first started working in the mailroom at HHM. Jimmy is able to charm Rebecca with all of his terrible lawyer jokes, but Chuck isn't happy with this because he never is. Anyways, this episode is the main introduction to Erin, and holy shit, I forgot how annoying she was. I would say the scene of her reading the notes out to Jimmy is a bad scene solely due to Erin, but Jimmy tricking her at the end is fucking wild, so that gives it a few points. Kim also has a great subplot in this episode though. She's still in doc review, so she does everything she can to try and get another client for HHM so she can get out of doc review, which is shown in a great montage. Kim's easily the most relatable character in the whole show, since all the other characters are either ADHD-filled morons, jealous assholes, selfish rich kids, or fucking psychopaths. Her character just gets better and better as the show goes on, but she's probably my second favorite character up till this point behind Mike. Anyway, she gets a bank called Mesa Verde to partner with HHM, but since Howard's a fucking loser, he still keeps her in doc review. I mean, even Chuck thought she would be out by now. The final scene also shows the introduction to Hector, and this is probably the least psychotic you will ever see him. Great episode. Number 44, Dedicado a Max. I think Dedicado a Max is a great episode, but it honestly had the potential to be even better. Jimmy's subplot, which honestly isn't the focus of the episode, is really entertaining. He decides to pull a scheme with Mr. Acker every single night so the construction keeps getting delayed for Mesa Verde. The montage showing this is amazing, and in general, I always love a good Slip and Jimmy scheme, especially when it's helping someone and not just to get Jimmy money. After this ultimately fails though, Kim decides that she wants to take down Kevin with Jimmy, which is not a great idea, but this is the point Kim is at in the show now, to where she's barely more moral than Jimmy. Jimmy gets Trevor to break into Kevin's house and try to find any scathing any evidence on him, but all he finds is a 30-year-old DUI. I love when characters that are on completely different sides of this universe meet, so seeing Kim interact with Trevor was very entertaining. What wasn't entertaining was the scene with Rich after this. Don't get me wrong, I love Rich. I just hate the scene. Rich tells Kim that she should lay off Mesa Verde for a while and that he's not buying her explanation, so she decides to yell for answers at him in front of everyone in the lobby. I don't know how I get secondhand embarrassment from a fictional TV show about lawyers, but this scene gives me that. Tell me in the comments how important this scene is to Kim's character or whatever the significance of the scene is, but I don't like it. Then we have Mike in Mexico, and Mike is indeed in Mexico. I like how this is the main focus of the episode, yet I didn't write a single note down for it. He gets treated for his wound, eats some food, tries to call Gus, then makes a windowsill, and has a talk with Gus at the very end. It's not bad by any means, but I really could care less about it. Literally nothing is happening. Still a very good episode overall, not one of Season 5's best though. Number 43, Pinata. This is a more Jimmy Center episode, which is weird since barely anything happens on his side of the episode. But his scenes are by far the best, so that definitely makes up for it. Jimmy gets some new phones delivered and brings them all into the nail salon where he'll store them. He decides to get revenge on the losers that mugged him, so he tricks them into chasing him into a dead end, then two big guys come behind them, kidnap them, and bring them into a basement and hang them upside down like pinatas. This is such an amazing scene. The acting and directing makes it seem like a horror movie, and it's all very well deserved. The one thing that confuses me about this scene is why Jimmy didn't ask the kids for his money back. This would be the perfect time. And Jimmy also goes to HHM to collect the check from Howard, and he notices that there's a lot less people there, and Howard tells him that HHM's reputation is down the toilet right now. Jimmy scolds him and tells him to do something about it, and even calls him a shitty lawyer. Then Howard says,
"Fuck you, Jimmy." There you go. Use that.
Easily the second best scene in the whole episode. This was back when Jimmy and Howard's beef was nothing more than them hating each other. Kim gets a job offer from Schweikert and Coakley again, which she considers taking, and Gus flies out the rest of the Germans to work on the lab. We get the introduction of the warehouse that the guys live in for the rest of the season, and we see Kai already being a problem. Gus also talks to Hector and basically tells him that he'll torture him as much as possible before killing him, which is a really wholesome scene. Overall, a great episode that doesn't have much going on, but it's still very entertaining. Number 42, Rico. This is the episode with Jimmy figuring out that Sandpiper is scamming their residents, so he decides to start a lawsuit against them with the help of Chuck. Jimmy reads his client's bills and figures out that Sandpiper is taking their residents' social security bills and completely overpricing their basic needs, meaning their residents get little money left over. Jimmy calls them out on this, which causes them to shred their papers, and this leads to the best scene in the episode, which has Jimmy dumpster dive for his shredded documents. While Jimmy dumpster diving is disgusting, his phone call with Rich is funny.
Sorry for interrupting your evening. Enjoy the magic flute. Blow my magic flute.
And so is this realization at the end that the papers were in the recycling bin the whole time. Speaking of Rich, he's one of my favorite side characters in the show, and this is his first appearance, so, you know, that's cool. Anyways, Jimmy tries to figure these documents out at Chuck's house, but he falls asleep, and when he wakes up, Chuck did most of the work for him and agrees to pursue the case alongside Jimmy. Their hug definitely symbolizes their relationship well. Anyways, Rich and a couple other lawyers come to Chuck's house and have a meeting with him and Jimmy. This meeting seems to be coming to a nice solution until Jimmy pulls out the fact that this is a cross-state case, or a RICO case. And when Rich asks how much the case will be for, Chuck talks for the first time during the whole meeting and says $20 million. Great scene. I also forgot to mention the cold open, which is a flashback that sees Jimmy tell Kim and Chuck about him passing the bar exam. When Jimmy asks Howard if he can work at HHM, Howard says no, which is where Jimmy's hate for Howard stems from. We now, of course, know that Chuck told Howard not to hire Jimmy, which makes certain events later on even more depressing. But this is a great flashback that explains a lot about Jimmy's character in the series overall. Very solid episode. Number 41, Nippy. Nippy's basically the Fly of Better Call Saul. It's the 10th episode of its 13-episode long season that doesn't exactly continue or progress the storyline from the previous episode, and it's not anything like a traditional episode of the show. Only difference is that Nippy does end up mattering to the plot, and I would argue that it's better than Fly. This is the only episode completely dedicated to the Gene plot, and while the last 3 episodes of the show are better, it's still very entertaining on its own. The premise of this episode is that Gene is trying to get Jeff in the game, which is how he's deciding to deal with the fact that Jeff knows who he is. Jeff agrees to be in the game, so they start planning a classic Slip and Jimmy scheme. The plan is to rob thousands of dollars from the mall that Gene works at, and he starts to bring the security guards Cinnabon every day and time how long it takes one of the guards to eat it so he knows how long he won't be monitoring the footage. The time ends up being 3 minutes, so he trains Jeff to run and get all the necessary items in this amount of time. We also get what I think is the first reference of Walter White's existence in this whole show, which is cool. Well, the day comes for them to pull off the scheme, and even when Jeff falls down, Gene is able to keep the guards' eyes on him by crying to him about being lonely, which honestly isn't even a lie at this point, but it works and they get the money. It's definitely a necessary episode, but it still feels like a one-off sort of thing. Like, if we showed this to someone who never watched Breaking Bad or Better Call Saul, they could still probably enjoy it. Just a fun episode in general. Number 40, Fifi. This episode is obviously just a setup for the end of season 2, but it's still incredible. Jimmy has just agreed to share an office with Kim, so she goes to HHM the next day to resign. I really like this scene. Howard's very shocked that Kim is going solo and tells her to not to worry about the rest of her student loans. Howard seems very nice and respectful in this conversation with Kim until he calls Mesa Verde directly after their meeting. Kim then sprints to her office and calls Paige immediately. She's able to get a meeting with Mesa Verde before Howard, and she seems to win them over. All seems well until Howard tells Chuck about this. Since Chuck is the pettiest person alive, he decides to go into the office, which is risking his life, to try and win back Mesa Verde. I get that he's just trying to win back a client, but you're lying if you think he would go to these measures if someone else had taken Mesa Verde. Anyways, the meeting goes well and they side back with HHM. This upsets Kim and pisses Jimmy off when he finds out about it. Speaking of Jimmy, we get an amazing scene with the camera crew where Jimmy does his usual con to record a commercial for free. I love the camera crew so much. Every scene with them is one of the highlights of this respectable episode, and this is no exception. Jimmy goes to Chuck's house later and lets Ernie go home. I know everyone wants a Gus spinoff and whatever, but tell me you would not want an Ernie spinoff. That shit would go so hard. Anyways, Jimmy decides to do the craziest fucking thing by taking Chuck's Mesa Verde files and changing one minor detail on them. The montage of him doing this is easily the best part of the episode. Jimmy using his mailroom skills is great alongside his dedication for Kim. It's clear from the very start of the show that she's all he really cares about. Number 39, Namaste. Namaste isn't much of an eventful episode, but it's season 5, so it's still incredible. Easily the most iconic scene of the episode is the one where Jimmy pulls a scheme in court by having his actual client sit in the back of the courtroom while an imposter shows up as the client. I know this is a very popular scene that we've all seen on YouTube Shorts 5 times, but it's still great to watch. A whole act of this episode is dedicated to Hank and Gomi trying to catch the dead drop, which I of course love since we don't get to see them at all in the show, so it's a breath of fresh air to hear their banter again. Gus also fucks with Lyle's mind by making him think he's doing something wrong, which is a big L. We don't tolerate Lyle hate. Kim has Jimmy become Acker's lawyer, which isn't anything special to the next episode, but I still like the scene of them talking. Then Jimmy throws some bowling balls on Howard's car. Trust me, I know Howard's been an asshole at certain times, but I don't understand how his solution to getting a job offer from him is to throw bowling balls at his car. It's still an entertaining scene though. Mike also gets fucking stabbed, so you know, that's cool too. Good episode. Number 38, Magic Man. First episode of season 5, and it starts off with a bang. This episode's obviously about Jimmy becoming a lawyer again and using the Saul Goodman persona to lure in customers, but there's some other things that happen on the cartel side. We get possibly the greatest scene in the entire show.
Werner Ziegler. You know how many Werner Zieglers there are in Germany? 27. 26 now, according to Mrs. Ziegler.
Then Lalo goes to a meeting with Gus and Bolsler, where Gus shows them his quote-unquote chicken chiller. Lalo finally meets his best friend Michael as well. Speaking of Michael, he sends all the Germans home. When Kai comes up to him and gets his stuff, Kai says that killing Werner was necessary and that he was soft, so Mike punches him in the face. When Casper comes up, he tells Mike that Werner was 50 of him. This is a great scene, and it's the first sign of how Mike will be acting for the next few episodes. Back to Jimmy, he gets into Saul Goodman's suit and starts selling phones to criminals that have direct hotline to him, so he gets automatic customers. Once he runs out of phones, people start to leave, so he decides to make a 50% off discount for non-violent crimes, which is something he told Kim that he wouldn't do earlier in the episode. This has absolutely no repercussions at all. We also get a great scene with Bill where the camera crew acts like news reporters and interview him about a case he's prosecuting against Jimmy. Then Jimmy coincidentally comes from the left and sneakily advertises to the fake news station, which gets him some spectators in courthouse that ask him for his card. Kim also starts feeling like she's getting more and more into the criminal mindset of Jimmy. Easily one of the best season stars in the whole show. Number 37, Sunk Costs. Sunk Costs is a slower point in between two big events for the show, but there's still enough in here to make for an amazing episode. On Mike's side, he meets Gus for the first time in this iconic scene, and it's the first time we get to see the criminal side of Gus in the show, and it's great to have him back. Gus tells Mike to not kill Hector, and he agrees, but still continues to fuck with him by planting drugs on one of his trucks, so it raises suspicion. Then we get to the Jimmy subplot, where a lot more is obviously happening. Jimmy waits outside of Chuck's house to get picked up by the police, and Chuck tries giving him a speech, but Jimmy claps right back in an insane act. Then Jimmy gets arrested, and it's yet again an amazing montage. Seeing Jimmy get his mugshot taken is something that I bet a lot of people were expecting to happen at some point in the show, but definitely not because of something like this. The next day, Ernie tells Kim about Jimmy getting arrested, and this is sadly the last time we ever see him besides the flashback in Winter. Your attorney, Ernie, 2025, please, Vince.
nothing I can do. Total eclipse of the heart.
Kim tries to be Jimmy's lawyer, but he insists that it's his problem and that he'll be his own lawyer, until the final scene where Chuck proposes a PPD and Jimmy finally agrees to it. This episode's mainly here to clear up some things and add tension, but it's still very entertaining throughout. Number 36, Bingo. This episode is the end to the Kettleman story arc, and it goes out with a bang. First, we get to see the conclusion of the 5-0 plotline, where Jimmy returns the notepad to the Philly cop, and Mike talks with the other detective whom he's friends with. I especially love the scene with Jimmy and Mike outside. Back to the Kettlemans, Kim gets them the best possible option they can take, which is pleading guilty and Craig spending 18 months in jail. Betsy can't possibly think of pleading guilty to such a thing, so they fire Kim and go back to Jimmy. Funny how she said that Jimmy is the type of lawyer that guilty people hire. Anyways, Kim tells Jimmy to try and convince them to go back to HHM. He tries, but once Betsy brings up the fact that Jimmy took the bribe money, he has no option and takes the case. Jimmy of course has a plan up his sleeve though, and has Mike rob the Kettlemans $1.6 million. Jimmy goes to their house the next day and tells them to look for their money, which makes both of them panic. Betsy tried to threaten Jimmy with the police, but he boxes them into a corner, which forces them to go back to Kim. This is easily the best scene in the episode. Jimmy's plan is genius, and the way he reveals it is hilarious, and it's incredibly satisfying seeing Betsy go out like this, because she is really fucking annoying. Great end to this plotline. Number 35, Gloves Off. Gloves Off is the real start of Mike's association with the cartel, which is what his plotline is about for the rest of the show. Nacho needs Tuco gone, and he hires Mike to kill him. Mike discusses places to shoot from with him, then goes to the gun dealer from Breaking Bad to buy a gun, but he changes his mind and tells Nacho that he has a different plan, which is to get Tuco arrested. We then get the return of Tuco and the first appearance of Crazy 8 in over 8 years, and they're both cool to see. This is sadly the last time we see Tuco, unless you count the Popcorners commercial, but Domingo appears throughout the rest of the show. I already mentioned this in my Breaking Bad video, but I like the duality of Domingo between Better Call Saul and Breaking Bad. He's like a completely different character in both of them. Well, then Mike crashes into Tuco's car, and Tuco decides to rob Mike and hold him at gunpoint. But Mike already called the cops, so Nacho gets out of there and Mike holds Tuco by the shirt, which causes Tuco to beat the shit out of Mike right in front of the cops. This further proves my statement of Tuco being the dumbest person in the Breaking Bad universe, maybe besides, Price. This is a really great scene and a nice send-off to an amazing character, but the Jimmy subplot manages to be just as good. Jimmy is seeing the consequences of him airing his commercial, which almost gets him fired at Davis and Maine, and it gets Howard to put Kim in doc review. Jimmy doesn't care too much about almost getting fired, but he's really mad about Kim being put in doc review, to the point where he tells Chuck that he'll quit the law if it means that Kim's taken out. Speaking of which, this is the first real interaction Jimmy and Chuck had since that incident, and it's easily the second best scene of the episode. The acting is top tier as always from both of them, and we get possibly Chuck's best line ever.
You have to admit this shows a lack of judgment on her part. She knows you. She should have known better.
You are such an asshole.
Why? For pointing out that her one mistake was believing in you?
Number 34, Something Stupid. Something Stupid has the biggest time skip in the whole Breaking Bad universe, probably besides Granite State, where it skips 7 months in a single cold open. Speaking of that cold open, it's easily one of the best in the entire show, and one of the best montages as well. While showing the time skip, it also shows Jimmy and Kim's relationship start to fade away while they succeed at their own ventures, which will start to change later on. On the cartel side, the workers start to get very tired of living in the warehouse and working every day, and Casper accidentally hits a pillar down, which causes a fight. This subplot is expanded on a lot in the last 3 episodes of season 4, so there's not much to say here. The Jimmy and Kim stuff is where it's at currently. Jimmy continues to sell burner phones out of his truck, but a police officer comes to his truck and asks him to relocate because it's a prime spot for criminals. Jimmy starts arguing with him until Huel comes back from the supermarket. He sees that Jimmy is arguing with him and decides to hit the officer in the head with his bag of groceries. This is a crazy ass scene that seemingly comes out of nowhere, yet changes the whole season 4 plot. Jimmy promises Huel that he won't serve any jail time and calls himself the Magic Man, but since Jimmy can't exactly defend Huel, he gets Kim. Kim does her absolute best and even tries to argue over the case with Suzanne, but it seems like there will be no way for Huel to not serve. Once Kim tells Jimmy this, he vaguely agrees, but she can tell that he's up to something. Kim then thinks of a different plan, which is left on a cliffhanger. Like I already said, this episode is mainly just to lead up to the last few season 4 episodes, which are better, but this one is still amazing with some top tier scenes. Number 33, Breathe. Breathe is the continuation of Chuck's death subplot, where everyone is still trying to agree with it, but it's much better than Smoke, mainly due to the subplots that have nothing to do with it. Well, let's get the Chuck stuff out of the way first. Kim goes to a meeting with Howard and Rebecca on Jimmy's behalf to discuss Chuck's will, and Jimmy gets a measly $5,000 from Chuck, as well as being invited to a scholarship committee funded by Chuck. Kim gets pissed off at Howard and goes on an insane rant to him after Rebecca leaves, screaming at him for laying his theory that Chuck killed himself on Jimmy the day of the funeral just to make Jimmy feel worse. I don't really think what Kim is saying is true for the most part, but I can see where she's coming from, and Ray Seahorn's acting is fucking insane in this scene. The fact that she never won an Emmy now makes that award show completely invalid, even though it probably was already. Anyways, Jimmy does some job interviews, and he literally gets the job on one, but decides to go off on the managers for being stupid instead of actually taking it. Mike is getting into some trouble with Lydia at Madrigal, which is fine. But then we have the Gus/Nacho subplot, which is mainly what the episode's about in the first place. Hector is in the hospital now, unresponsive, and Gus has hired a doctor from a different hospital to work with Hector. Tyrus gives Gus a paper with some information about Hector's case at this point, and he puts the puzzle pieces together that Nacho was the one that did this. That night, Nacho and Arturo go to get some money from Tyrus and Victor, and they manage to get an extra out of them, but that doesn't last for long because Arturo was soon after suffocated to death out of nowhere by Gus, and Nacho is held at gunpoint. Gus tells Nacho that he knows what he did and that Nacho will now be working for Gus, while Arturo is casually dying in the back. Easily one of the most shocking and disturbing scenes in the whole show, especially on first viewing. I remember feeling really weird after first seeing this. A much more cartel-oriented episode, which is for the better in this case. Number 32. Click, the final episode of season 2. The stakes were high for this episode, seeing as it was the season finale, while also coming after one of the best episodes of the show up to this point. Thankfully, it delivered. It leaves right where Nailed left off, when Chuck hit his head in the print shop. Jimmy rushes in and has Lance call the police. Chuck is then brought into the hospital and begs everyone there not to shine lights or do scans on him, and as much as I wasn't a big fan of Chuck at this point, this is a really sad scene. Even if his condition wasn't real, he definitely thought it was, so seeing him this scared and vulnerable is a little depressing, even after everything he's done. Later on, Jimmy and Ernie go into Chuck's room, and after all of that, all he still cares about is the situation with Jimmy, and he tries to get Ernie to admit that Jimmy was outside of the print shop. But since Ernie is the greatest fictional character of all time, he doesn't budge. After Jimmy talks to him outside, he says his iconic,
I missed the mailroom.
Then to the Mike stuff. He tries to shoot Hector out in the desert, but Nacho knows that Mike is there and stands right in front of Hector, so Mike doesn't shoot. And the Salamanca twins kill the driver who Mike robbed, which is also sad. This is definitely one of the more depressing episodes in the series in general. Mike's car then starts honking non-stop, so he goes to check it out, and there's a note on his windshield that says, "Don't." Which apparently is Gus. I guess this is cool, but unless you for some reason analyze the first letter of every episode and scramble them, then I don't really know how anyone would figure out that this was Gus on their own. Maybe Gus was getting really hyped back when this episode aired, but when I watched this for the first time, I had no idea that this was Gus. Then we get to the final scene of the whole season. Howard calls Jimmy and tells him that Chuck has quit the law. Jimmy rushes over to Chuck's house and sees him covering his walls with aluminum. Chuck says that he's doing this because of the Mesa Verde fumble, so Jimmy admits to him that he did switch the numbers on the paper. Chuck completely bamboozles Jimmy by recording this all on tape. He yet again risks his well-being because of how petty he is. This becomes the main part of the plot for the next few episodes, and it's a great season cliffhanger to leave off on. Overall, not one of the best season finales of the show, but better than season 1's, and overall an amazing episode. Interlude time. If you watched the Breaking Bad video, you would know that in the interlude, the halfway point for the episodes, I did an interlude where I ranked the Breaking Bad seasons. Here, I'm going to be not just ranking the Better Call Saul seasons, but I'm going to do a overall ranking of the Breaking Bad universe. I'm not really going to say anything about the Breaking Bad ones. I'll kind of just say where they're placed because if you want to know my thoughts on that, just go watch the Breaking Bad video. And if we're counting El Camino, it's number 12. I like it, but it's not really necessary. It's nothing crazy. I enjoy it. I'm glad it exists, but if it didn't exist, my life really wouldn't be too different. All right, so number 11 in the whole ranking, we have Better Call Saul season 2. Better Call Saul season 2 is probably the only season out of this whole universe that I wouldn't consider amazing. I think everything besides Better Call Saul season 2 is at least a 9 out of 10. I'd say Better Call Saul is more like an 8 out of 10. I mean, Better Call Saul season 2 is more like an 8 out of 10. Mainly just because, I don't know, there's not too much going on. I mean, part of it, Jimmy isn't even a lawyer. He's kind of just not doing anything. And then to be honest, I think Mike kind of, I won't say he carries the season. I actually do enjoy Jimmy more in this season than in season 1. I think Jimmy and Mike are equal in this season though with their subplots because Mike, gets involved in the cartel and whatever, which I probably prefer to whatever Jimmy has going on. Nothing is really crazy in this season until the last few episodes, which have obviously Nailed and all that stuff with the Mesa Verde Chuck stuff, which I do really like, and you'll see some of those episodes are higher up. I also, speaking of the Mike subplot, I love Price. I was already talking about Price. He's one of my favorite side characters in this whole show. I love him. So I love his scenes in this season. And this is the main season he's in. But yeah, that's it. I mean, it's just kind of the weakest to me. Obviously, it's not weak. I'd still give it a strong 8, but it's weaker compared to everything else. And number 10, we have Breaking Bad season 2. So yeah, I do think the season 2 of both seasons is the worst. Number 9, we have Better Call Saul season 3. I know this is probably a hot take. I know a lot of people really like Better Call Saul season 3, and I do as well. I just think the other seasons are better. Obviously, this has chicanery, which is a lot of people's favorite episode in the whole show, one of the most iconic in the whole show, and you'll see it's very high on my list. And there's some other really good episodes like Witness is in this season. My second lowest rated was the first episode, Mabel. Yeah, there's just some slower episodes here. I'm not too in love with all the Mike stuff in this season, to be honest. This is not Mike's best season. This is probably one of his weaker seasons. Obviously Gus is introduced, which is great. Just like after Chicanery though, it's like nothing crazy, you know. I feel like the first 5 or however many episodes to Chicanery, obviously like that's really good, and then like everything after is still very good, but it's not like, it's weaker. It's still great, don't get me wrong, still great. There's even some amazing episodes like after that, but you know, after Jimmy gets disbarred, like what is he really doing? You know, he's kind of just either scamming old people or like you know, making commercials. Like there's not really anything going on, but it's still amazing. I can't complain. It's really just like which ones I very slightly prefer. Number 8, I have Breaking Bad season 3. So yes, I have both season 2s and then both season 3s. We'll actually get some different seasons here on out, but this is actually something that kind of reoccurs in this list, to be honest. Number 7, I have Better Call Saul season 4. I know this is definitely a lot of people's least favorite season. Like this would be at a lot of people's like at number 11. I understand mainly because even though Jimmy in season 3, even though Jimmy is disbarred for half the season in season 3, Jimmy is disbarred the whole season of season 4. Like he only gets reinstated in like the last episode, like the last scene of the season. So the whole season he's not a lawyer, which is kind of like the point of the show. So and then also like I know a lot of people don't like the Gus/Mike subplot with the lab, which I understand. I understand both of those complaints, but I think the way it's done is just like really good. Like Jimmy selling the phones, the whole thing with Huel, like I love that. That whole thing is awesome. I do enjoy the subplot of the Germans working on the lab. It's, you know, obviously Werner Ziegler, that guy. And then, you know, there's again top tier episodes. Winner. Everyone knows Winner. And of course, how can you forget the introduction of Lalo? I mean, I know he's really only in like 2 episodes. He's in 3, but like one of them is just like the final scene of the episode where he gets introduced. He's in 2 episodes though, and he still steals the show in like pretty much both of those episodes. Yeah, I mean, it's Lalo's introduction, come on. I still think Better Call Saul season 4 is incredible. I think it's a bit overhated. I think it's very good, even though my lowest rated episode was season 4, but that was just one episode. I think the overall it's like really fucking good. All right, at number 6 we have Breaking Bad season 1, and then at number 5 we have Better Call Saul season 1. I know this is definitely a bit of a hot take. I feel like the real fans of like Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul do like really enjoy season 1. They do probably more like in the middle of their list. I feel like a lot of like certain people, if you're not like really into like the whole universe, they do not like Better Call Saul season 1. I don't really understand though. Like it's like there's slower seasons of Better Call Saul. I guess it's because like this is the first season, so like, you know, by like I don't know, season 4, right, which is probably like the slowest season, you're kind of already really invested in the story. Like you're not invested in the story in season 1, so I guess I understand if someone would like, if there's so many like top tier episodes, top tier scenes. I mean, if you like Mike, I mean, because I know a lot of people's favorite character is Mike in Breaking Bad. If you like Mike, then I don't understand how you can't like season 1, because season 1 is like every Mike fan's dream, bro. Like there's so many amazing episodes and scenes with Mike in season 1. I think he steals the show easily in season 1. Obviously there's some great Jimmy stuff too. Chuck is like cool in that season. There's not much Kim, so I guess if you're a really big fan of Kim, then maybe that's why you don't really like season 1. No, I just think season 1 is very consistent. So many incredible episodes. I don't even think I've talked about like too many season 1 episodes so far, so I won't really say anything. But yeah, no, I'm a very big fan of season 1. All right, number 4 we have Breaking Bad season 4. I will just comment on this one. I think it's funny. This, like on my first viewing of both shows, this Breaking Bad season 4 was my number 1, and now it's my number 4. So number 3 we have Better Call Saul season 6. This I know might piss some people off that it's like not number 1 or 2. Yeah, I do not think this is the best season of the show. I know pretty much everyone has the opinion that this is the best season of the show. I don't really think I've seen too many people have the opinion that this isn't the best season of the show. Like, to me though, I don't know. There's like this Better Call. I mean, when on my first viewing, it was my favorite season. It is so good. It is like the perfect finale, not just to this show, but the whole Breaking Bad universe. Like, it's just so fucking good. Just the black and white episodes. Oh man, like Nippy. I already talked about Nippy, but then you have the 3 after that. I feel like the reason it's just a little bit lower than like number 1 and 2 is just because like after Rock and Hard Place where Nacho dies, in between that and Planet Execution, which are like 2 very highly rated episodes among fans, there's 3 episodes that are just like not that good. Like, they're great, don't get me wrong, but they are not like up to par with really anything else in this season, especially the episode before Planet Execution. Like, that one is just, again, great, but just like it is nothing compared to some of the shit that is actually in the season. Oh no, but there's so many top tier episodes. I'm not trying to discredit it all. I'm just explaining why it's not like as high as it is. And then number 2, we have the highest rated Better Call Saul season, Better Call Saul season 5. Honestly, I'm the first person I've ever seen to have the opinion that Better Call Saul season 5 is the best. I mean, to me, I don't know. It's just like, it's more consistent. That's really it, to be honest. That's literally the only reason. Also, mainly, that's one of the 2 reasons. The other reason is just Lalo. Like, I know Lalo's in season 6, but he dies like what, episode 8, right, or 7. There's a good like 5 or 6 episodes that he's like not in, and also like after like the 1st or 2nd episode of season 6, he's literally not in the season to like what, episode 5, I want to say. So he's maybe in like 4 episodes in this whole season, and then he's in like 2 or 3 episodes in season 4. He's in pretty much every episode of season 5, and Lalo is just incredible, man. He's so entertaining. So that's another reason why I love season 5. I don't know. I like Jimmy and Kim's relationship a lot in season 5. I like Kim's subplots, Jimmy's subplots, even Mike's subplots are great. We got to see Hank and Gomi. That's amazing. I love Hank. First time we see Lalo, like Lalo and Jimmy just interacting, is just amazing. Obviously, you have Bagman. You have those last 3 episodes are just incredible in this season. To me, it's just the most consistent. Even like the weakest episodes of the season are just really fucking good. And there's less weaker. Like I've probably talked about 2 episodes. I want to say I've talked about 2 episodes in this season so far. Every episode going forward is at least a 9 out of 10. So I think that kind of gives you like my thoughts on it. Like, it's just so good. I don't know. And then number 1, Breaking Bad season 5. So yes, I do think both season 5s are the best of the shows. Something to say about this? I mean, come on, it's Breaking Bad season 5. As good as Better Call Saul seasons 5 and 6 are, I don't think any season of any show ever is beating Breaking Bad season 5. Like, I think, I don't know if I said this in my Breaking Bad video, but I honestly think like Breaking Bad season 5B is like one of the only like perfect pieces of media, like, in general. Like, so yeah, that's just my ranking. Don't take it too seriously. I think they're all very, very close. Number 31, Hero. Once Jimmy finds the Kettlemans, they beg him not to tell anyone about the money and bribe. He tries turning this bribe into them making him their lawyer, but Betsy says that he's the kind of lawyer that guilty people hire, so Jimmy accepts the bribe. Before Jimmy is able to use this money, he gets Nacho out. Nacho is very ungrateful and still thinks Jimmy snitched on him, but Jimmy uses his big mouth and destroys Nacho. Pause. Nacho then walks out, and the both of them live the rest of their lives very happy men that never have to interact with each other again. Anyways, Jimmy launders his money, then spends his money on making a billboard right where Howard drives every day. That looks like HHM's logo, where Jimmy is in a suit that looks like Howard's, and has the exact same hair as Howard's. Really weird coincidence. In all seriousness, it's hilarious how petty Jimmy is. This man has been doing anything and everything for the last 3 episodes to get a paycheck, and as soon as he gets one, he does this. Anyways, Howard sends Jimmy a cease and desist, and they go to court where the judge gives Jimmy 48 hours to take down the billboard. Jimmy then doubles down and stages a situation where the construction worker taking down the billboard falls off and hangs, and Jimmy is coincidentally recording a commercial while this happens. Jimmy then climbs the billboard and saves the guy, which was all recorded by the camera crew, and this is the first time we see them. Greatest side characters of all time, by the way. Jimmy then gets on the news and is seen as a hero, which gives him a bunch of more clients. He tries to hide this from Chuck by not giving him the newspaper that has the story in it, but Chuck is a nerd and can't go a day without reading the paper, so he takes his space blanket and buys the newspaper off his neighbor. Very iconic scene, and the first of Chuck looking like a dumbass being outside with his space blanket. Also, I forgot to mention the cold open. Goes along with the theme of scams throughout the episode, and it also completely foreshadows Marco's death. The show has more foreshadowing in the first 4 episodes than I caught in the majority of Breaking Bad. Amazing episode all around. Number 30, Nacho. This is the episode that deals with the Kettlemans supposedly getting kidnapped by Nacho. The cold open to this episode shows a flashback where Chuck visits Jimmy in prison after the Chicago sunroof incident. The scene has really cool foreshadowing when Chuck makes Jimmy promise that he won't let him down, and also connects to Jimmy visiting Nacho while he's locked up as well. Onto the actual episode, Jimmy worries that Nacho is a threat to the Kettlemans, so he calls them anonymously and tells them that they're in danger. They flee with their money, so Nacho is now the prime suspect and is arrested. Now Jimmy has to defend Nacho, even though he was also defending the Kettlemans. There's also some funny Mike scenes sprinkled throughout all this, like
Screw you, geezer!
and the iconic
Okay, here's the deal. You assaulted this man,
Give me a break. I barely touched the guy.
but you laid hands on him first.
Finger. I laid finger on him.
This is the first episode where Jimmy and Mike really talk about something other than stickers, and it kind of shows how their dynamic is going to be for the rest of the series. Jimmy goes out in the desert and eventually finds the Kettlemans, which leaves on a cliffhanger. A big thing I noticed about this whole part of the season is karma. Karma is possibly the biggest theme throughout both Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul, since every choice made in the show matters. But even this early on in the show, Jimmy has already suffered so many consequences just for trying to scam Betsy in episode 1. He got kidnapped by Tuco, which cost him lots of money for the skateboarder's broken legs, and getting kidnapped also made Nacho aware of him, which caused everything that happened in this episode. The writing already being immaculate this early on is a good sign of how it'll be for the rest of the show. Number 29, Wine and Roses. Season 6's intro has basically nothing going on and is still able to be great since it's season 6. Even though we get left on a huge cliffhanger from 510, this episode doesn't focus much on Lalo and Nacho, but there are a few scenes on it. All of Nacho's scenes are just him running away, and the final one shows him getting into a motel with a gun and some money. Meanwhile, Lalo hires someone to act as him so everyone thinks Lalo is dead, while he's really going back to New Mexico. In the final scene, Lalo causes a wait for a ride so he can call Hector. He tells Hector that he's alive and that he's going back north. Hector makes Lalo come up with a different plan, so he tells the drivers he's not going on the ride anymore. They don't give Lalo his money back, so he shoots them in good old Lalo fashion, and the episode ends. On Jimmy's side, we get an amazing cold open showing Jimmy's house being raided after the events of Ozymandias, I assume. The song playing during this montage has such a nostalgic and surreal feeling, and the iconic Zafira Anejo bottle cap falls out of the desk at the end, which I think is supposed to symbolize that Jimmy's ascent to the criminal underworld is over, seeing as he goes to Omaha next. During the actual timeline, Jimmy gets confronted by the DA about Jorge de Guzman, and he accidentally refers to him as Lalo, which raises a lot of suspicion. But the big thing for this subplot in this episode is the first slip in Jimmy's scheme against Howard, or at least the first one that Kim is involved in. Jimmy goes into the country club while Howard is playing golf with Cliff, and his plan is to plant some baby powder in Howard's locker that looks like coke. He gets interrupted very quickly by Kevin, though, who tells the worker to not allow Jimmy a tour. When the worker breaks the news to Jimmy, he's able to accuse the country club of anti-Semitism, since he introduced himself as Saul. He makes a whole big scene which gets Kevin to try and attack Jimmy, but gets held back. Then Jimmy tells the tour guide it's not his fault and asks him to use the locker bathroom. Jimmy gets down to the bathroom, floods it, then tells the worker that there's a flood, then sneaks into the locker room, and just before Howard and Cliff get in, he's able to sneak the baby powder in, and successfully concerns Cliff. I know nothing's really going on in this episode besides little advancements in Nacho and Lalo getting back to Albuquerque and Kim and Jimmy causing Howard's downfall, but these scenes are still very entertaining, which is all that matters at the end of the day, especially the country club scene. Great start to season 6. Number 28, Carrot and Stick. Continuing the Nacho being on the run arc, Carrot and Stick is another amazing episode with much more action than Wine and Roses. I prefer the cartel stuff this time around, so we'll talk about Jimmy and Kim first. They decide that their next move in taking down Howard should be continuing with the cocaine story and spreading it, but not directly. Jimmy proposes this to Kim and she thinks it's a good idea, but she thinks Jimmy should use someone that has history with Howard, so Jimmy goes to the Kettlemans. The Kettlemans are now ironically running a tax servicing business, so Jimmy goes to their store and says he can exonerate the Kettlemans if they sign a paper. Betsy is very hesitant but gives in, and Jimmy tells them that their previous lawyer, Howard Hamlin, actually has an addiction to cocaine. Betsy, of course, decides to run off with the information and go to different lawyers because she's a bitch, but that was a part of the plan anyways. Jimmy goes back to their shop the next day with Kim, and Betsy says that there was no case all along and that Jimmy was trying to bring down Howard's career. When Betsy threatens to tell Howard, Kim calls the IRS and threatens to turn the Kettlemans in for overtaxing their customers. Since Betsy's a pussy, she hangs up the phone and gives in, and Kim tells her to not only never speak of Howard Hamlin again, but to also give the money back to every single customer that she has scammed in the past. While Kim is doing good by trying to get the scammed customers their money back, everything else about this interaction just adds to her descent into her new personality similar to Jimmy's, and arguably even worse since he's now the one advising her to not go along with certain schemes. Meanwhile in Mexico, Nacho is still at the motel and he realizes that he's being watched, so he punches the air conditioner out of his room, then jumps out of the motel, furthering his Minecraft parkour skills. Nacho is able to loop around and pull a gun on the guy that was watching him. The guy says he won't be able to shoot him because if any gunshots are heard in this neighborhood, he'll be done. so Nacho just casually pistol whips him and rushes to a car. Before he's able to turn the car on, a bunch of Bolsa's men show up looking for Nacho, alongside the Salamanca cousins. Nacho is able to hide for a bit, but once he's caught, he starts shooting at them with his dual pistols and kills a few of them. One of the Salamanca cousins kills one of Bolsa's men shooting at Nacho, then they both start walking towards Nacho's car without shooting at him for some reason. This gives Nacho enough time to start the car and back up without being shot. He waits a second to gather himself, then he accelerates full speed at the Salamanca cousins while they shoot at him, but he goes fast enough to where they're not able to kill him. This is easily the best scene of the episode, and one of my favorite Nacho scenes in general. He just 10v1'd a bunch of cartel members with dual pistols without a scratch on his body. I'm glad he was able to drive off into the sunset again and change his identity and live the rest of his life in Mexico. I also forgot to mention that Gus has figured out that Lalo's still alive through Hector's facial expressions. Speaking of Gus, he has a meeting with Mike and Tyrus about Nacho, who has gone his own way instead of going along with Gus's orders. So he tells Mike to bring Nacho's father to him. Mike refuses, so Tyrus pulls a gun out on Mike. Mike then gets a call from none other than Nacho, who asks Mike to talk to Gus. This is definitely one of the best episodes for Nacho's character. He never had much screen time where he was the spotlight, so it's nice that it's here in early season 6, even if it doesn't last very long. Number 27, Quite a Ride. This is where season 4 really starts to pick up in my opinion, with both subplots. While I would say it's more of a Mike/cartel centered episode, my favorite part of it is easily Jimmy selling the cell phones. The montage at the doghouse is great, and him getting robbed is crazy and very sad too. Jimmy has always been a salesman and it shows here. He's able to sell so many of these phones. Jimmy also sees Howard completely depressed in the bathroom of the court, and even though Howard annoys me sometimes, it does hurt to see him like this. The cold open is also a flash forward to Saul fleeing and Francesca shredding papers, which probably takes place during Ozymandias, and it's a pretty cool scene. Big L for Francesca for not hugging Saul. On Kim's side, she's working with pro bono clients and puts them in front of Mesa Verde for a while, which does not go over well. Then we have the cartel stuff. Gus flies the German out to look at the lab and see what he can do. The scene is very drawn out, but I think it's done really well and entertainingly. Mike is able to see how quickly this guy can make a decision, so they decide to decline him and fly a different guy out. And that guy happens to be none other than
Werner Ziegler?
Werner is definitely one of the best side characters in the whole show, competing with Ernie and Price, but we'll get into him more later. Overall, an amazing episode and a big step up from what has been happening in season 4. Number 26, Fall. Fall is able to make a very diverse episode in terms of subplots, and they're all really great in their own way. On Nacho's side, he knows that Hector is about to invade his dad's shop, so he warns his dad, which he dismisses and kicks Nacho out of his house. With Mike, he goes to Madrigal to get a job so he can launder his money, and he talks to Lydia, who thankfully isn't as much of a paranoid bitch like she is in Breaking Bad, so I actually don't mind her yet. On Chuck's side, he loses yet another client for HHM, which makes Howard suggest that Chuck retires, but he changes this to a demand when Chuck refuses. Chuck then decides to sue HHM instead of retiring, which I don't blame him for. I don't actually hate Chuck as much on my rewatch. He definitely did some shitty things to his brother, but he's really a victim in certain situations like in chicanery, and now this. Howard also says this:
Chuck, there's more to life than this.
Which is probably the most hypocritical thing said in this entire show. Then, the Jimmy subplot. Jimmy visits Irene to see how much money Sandpiper could settle for right now, and when he realizes that his cut of it would be well over $1 million, he decides to take advantage of Irene and her friends by telling all of them that Irene is deciding to buy expensive sneakers that Jimmy gave her, instead of settling with Sandpiper and thinking about her friends. This makes them all turn on her, which she gets upset about, and the nail in the coffin is when Jimmy rigs a bingo match so that Irene wins, and when nobody claps for her, she starts bawling and runs away. She tells Jimmy about how her friends were turning on her, and he coincidentally knows exactly why they did this and explains it to her. This gets Irene to settle, and Jimmy gets his cut. I know Jimmy ends up being a part of a meth empire and responsible for the deaths of innocent people and defending psychopath cartel members and whatever, but I think this is morally the worst thing Jimmy has ever done. Taking advantage of the elderly is so fucked up, and especially in the way that he does it to Irene is just insane. Anyways, we also have Kim overworking herself the whole episode, and at the end we get the jump scare car crash, which will give me nightmares for the next week. Overall, an amazing episode with lots of different great scenes from multiple different plot lines. Number 25, Lantern. This is easily one of the most depressing episodes in the whole show. There isn't a single point in this episode that I laughed at or was really entertained by. Pretty much every single thing that happens in this episode is sad in one way or another. Kim gets into a car accident and almost dies, Chuck gets paid off so he leaves HHM, Jimmy admits to the old ladies that he manipulated them and loses his Sandpiper money, Chuck tells Jimmy that he never mattered to him, Hector almost fucking dies, which I guess is good, but still. And to top it all off, Chuck has a mental breakdown and kills himself at the end of the episode. On my rewatch, I went from basically despising Chuck to thinking he's one of the greatest characters in the whole Breaking Bad universe. You obviously want to root for Jimmy on your first viewing because he's the protagonist and the bad things he does seem like they're for a good reason, but Chuck's reasons for doing bad things usually also have good reasons behind them. In fact, they're usually much better reasons morality-wise. Of course he can come off as a jerk sometimes, and we still won't forget how we treated Ernie, but who else also comes off as a jerk sometimes? Literally every main character in this entire show, besides, I guess, Kim. As far as I'm aware, all Chuck ever was a mentally ill genius who was a jerk at some points, but ultimately wanted the best outcome for everyone. and he just gets completely fucked over in this episode. Howard cares so much about HHN's reputation that he will pay Chuck millions of dollars just so he doesn't have to be a part of the firm anymore. This causes Chuck to spiral out of control and have a mental breakdown where he basically destroys his house trying to find where a source of electricity is. And this is a really depressing montage. Michael McKean's acting is amazing as always. It really feels like watching a schizophrenic go insane. Really uncomfortable. Then the episode ends with Chuck repeatedly kicking a desk until a lantern falls off, which sets his house on fire and kills him. Another very sad scene. I also noticed a parallel between Kim and Chuck in this episode, which might be a stretch, but I'll say it anyways. Kim almost killed herself by having too much work, while Chuck did kill himself because of his lack of work. Anyway, some other significant things are Hector finally reacting to Nacho's pills, which makes him fall on the ground and start suffocating. But of course, the psychopath Gus saves him. If Merge Productions is watching, please make a video on if Gus decided to not save Hector in the scene, because the whole plotline of the universe could have been different, so, that would be awesome if you are watching. Then we also have the crazy scene of Jimmy admitting to manipulating Irene's friends so that he can get the Sandpiper money, which really hurts to see, but it's Jimmy finally doing the right thing for once, which is nice. Also, the only scene where I haven't wanted to have Aaron in a chokehold the whole time. Well, like I said, a really depressing episode, especially for a finale, but it pulls it off extremely well. Number 24. Breaking Bad. While the episode Breaking Bad of the show Better Call Saul definitely isn't as good as the episode Better Call Saul on the show Breaking Bad, it's still an incredibly well-made episode that adds even more suspense for the series finale. This episode focuses on Gene getting back into the game with Jeff and Buddy, where they pull off even more inhumane schemes than before. This time, Gene starts by getting random people drunk at bars. Then, Jeff picks them up in a taxi and gives them water laced with barbiturates. After they get home and fall asleep, Buddy breaks into their homes and takes pictures of everything in their home. They sell this information and get thousands in return. The montage of all of this happening is great, like every montage in the show, but they get to one specific guy who has cancer. Gene and Jeff do what they're supposed to do, but once Buddy gets to his part, he folds and decides to not scam him. Gene gets angry at him and fires him, then forces Jeff to drive him back to the man's house so they can finish the scam. And the final scene of the episode is Gene breaking into the man's house. Listen, I know Jimmy's been a bad person probably since he'd switched his name to Saul Goodman, but this is probably the most awful that we've seen him. There is one more Gene scene in this episode where he calls Francesca to get info on everyone like Jesse, Skyler, Hugo, etc. And it's a great scene. Gene also calls Kim after this, and we don't see what is said, but he gets a bit angry and destroys the phone booth. Now onto the Breaking Bad shit. The cold open of this episode is so fucking cool. We see Saul begging for his life in the back of Walt and Jesse's RV while the camera pans to their cooking materials. And we also see the very iconic scene of Saul looking down in his grave in the desert, blaming everything on Nacho, which is very similar to Better Call Saul. Wait, that doesn't make sense. Saul blames everything on Nacho, similarly to how he does it in Breaking Bad. Wait, that also doesn't make sense. Wait, how am I supposed to say this? How can it be similar to Better CallUl when it's in Breaking Bad? How can it be similar to Better Call Saul when it's in Better Call Saul? How can it be similar to Better Call Saul when it's in Breaking Bad? How can it be similar to Breaking Bad when it's in Better Call Saul? How can it be similar to Breaking Saul when it's in Better Call Saul? How can it be similar to Better Call Saul when it's in Breaking Bad? How can it be similar to Better Call Saul when it's in Breaking Bad? How can it be similar to Better Call Saul? How can it be similar to Better Call Saul? How can it be similar to Breaking Bad? How can it be similar to Better Call Saul? Anyways, later in the episode, Saul is brought back into the RV, and we actually get to see Walt and Jesse, which is so fucking cool. And yes, the elephant in the room, Jesse surprisingly does not look like he did 13 years before this. That right there is the reason why this isn't the 10. Definitely not a Raw Robins moment. Very disappointed. The rest of the scene is really cool, seeing how intrigued Saul is to everything Walt and Jesse have going on. And Jesse asking about Lalo does not feel real. And it's just really nice to have both of them back and with their normal banter, even if this is the only scene in the whole show where they're together. We also get a scene later on where Mike tells Saul who Walt really is, and Mike actually tells Saul that he shouldn't work with Walt, but he of course doesn't listen and shows up to his high school. If you're a fan of Breaking Bad, which you most likely are if you're watching Better Call Saul, then I have no idea how you wouldn't like this episode. It's just straight fan service mixed with more entertaining Gene schemes. Number 23, the guy for this. A lot of people probably remember this episode as the one with Hank and Gomi, but there's so much more to this episode. I think the guy for this is the real start of how the rest of the show will be from this point going forward. As entertaining and well written as it all is, there's always just a tiny bit of a sad, introspective, nostalgic feeling that the acting and cinematography gives off that all amalgamates into the finale of the show. That's how I see it, at least. I mainly get that feeling from the two scenes where Jimmy and Kim come home and see the other already on the balcony having a beer. In both of these scenes, they both came home from very stressful and tiring days in very different ways. Jimmy is directly getting involved with the game by relaying Domingo information to Hank and Gomi. It's very nice to see them, by the way. Which will cause other people in the game to be arrested as well, and he's also becoming the attorney of one of the most sociopathic people in this whole universe, which cannot be easy on him. But it pays the bills. Kim is dealing with Mesa Verde for hours and hours, while deep down she knows that doing pro bono cases is her real passion. She has to try to convince this old guy named Mr. Acker to take a settlement deal to sell his house, because it's on property he doesn't own. This guy won't budge and starts shit-talking Kim to her face, so Kim gives him a harsh sense of reality in this amazing speech, which is basically just an average Kim moment by this point due to how many great scenes she has. Once both Kim and Jimmy come home to each other, it may seem like they're falling out of love on the surface level, which is what this whole show is based on. But in the final scene where they get off on throwing beers off the balcony and waking neighbors up, it's shown how they'll do anything to love each other, which again amalgamates into the climax of this entire show. Sorry, I'm probably going way too deep into this. Anyways, the scene of Mike beating the shit out of the guy that punches him on the street is awesome as fuck. Nice to know that Mike's still the best character in the show. A very eventful episode, and an amazing one at that. Number 22, Sabrosito. This is the first main cartel-centered episode, and it's phenomenal. The intro shows Hector and Bolsa at Eladio's house in Mexico, and this is the first time we see Bolsa and Eladio on the show. Hector brings Eladio some cash, but Bolsa brings him much more, which is due to Pollos Hermanos. Eladio is much more impressed with Gus and expects this to continue from Hector, which makes Hector envious of Gus. Then we flash forward to Hector going to Los Pollos Hermanos with Arturo and Nacho, and waiting for Lyle's balls while smoking a cigar and going to Gus's room. Speaking of Lyle, this is his first appearance, and I love this guy. He's just like Ernie, there's absolutely no way you can hate him. Speaking of Ernie, his final appearance was the episode before this, and Ernie and Lyle are never on screen together, you know.
Coincidence? I think not!
Anyways, Gus shows up and makes Hector leave, then gives a long-ass speech to everyone the next day, which gets an applause. Of course, started by the GOAT himself. With pretty much the first half of this episode dedicated to this plot, it's hard to forget that Jimmy is literally about to get prosecuted by Chuck. And Jimmy has Mike pretend to be a repairman to Chuck and repair his door, while he really just takes pictures of Chuck's house for Jimmy's hearing. Chuck and Mike interacting is the weirdest thing in the world, but it's such a great scene. They have completely clashing personalities, and I love it. We also get the scene of everyone going over Jimmy's statement with Chuck's lawyer, where Jimmy gives a straight up apology to Chuck there, which means absolutely nothing about the next episode, but at least is nice while it lasts. Kim then gets confirmation that the tip will be played during the hearing, which leads to this awesome ass outro, which is followed by one of the greatest episodes in the whole show. Another amazing early season 3 episode. Number 21, Uno. While not as robust as the Breaking Bad pilot, nor does it set up the plot for the whole show as much, it does an amazing job at introducing us back into the world of Albuquerque and to the new characters such as Kim, Howard, and Chuck. The episode's cold open is of course the first Gene scene, which was definitely confusing on first viewing, but on rewatch it all makes sense. The real first scene of the episode is Jimmy defending 3 kids that fucked a severed head, which somehow are some of the better people he's had the chance of defending. From this scene alone, you could already tell that the cinematography of the show is going to be much better than Breaking Bad's. The shots are already a lot more artsy. You can also see how the comedy is still there, Jimmy of course being a highlight even before it's all good in persona. We then get the iconic introduction of Mike with,
I need more stickers. Don't have enough stickers.
and then Jimmy runs over with a skateboarder and we get another iconic line from him.
Furthermore, does a steaming pile of crap scream payday to you, huh? The only way that entire car is worth $500 is if there's a $300 hooker sitting in it.
We get introduced to Howard and Kim with Jimmy's visit to HHM, and we see the iconic shot of Jimmy and Kim smoking. After this, we're introduced to Chuck, then the rest of the episode is dedicated to Jimmy trying to bamboozle Betsy Kettleman with the skateboarders. It reminds me of something like the train heist or the magnet scene from Breaking Bad, and while a lot less extreme, it's almost as entertaining. This is definitely not the last or the best of the Slip and Jimmy schemes that we see throughout the show, but it's a great one to start with. A big reason why it's not one of the best anyways is the fact that it doesn't even work. The skateboarders mistake Betsy for Tuco's grandma, which leads to a really great cliffhanger. Overall, an amazing pilot to an amazing show. Number 20, JMM. After Lalo is arrested in 506, Nacho calls Jimmy and tells him that Jorge de Guzman is waiting for him. Jimmy representing Lalo is a very big turning point for the show. Even haters of Better Call Saul can't deny the run it has from mid-season 5 till the end of the show. Well, before we get to the court scenes, Kim and Jimmy get married, which makes me really happy, but also sad knowing what's about to happen a season from now. Kim has a meeting with Kevin later where he expresses his disappointment in her and that she could do way better than Jimmy, but Kim decides to call him out for never listening to her advice and going with his own decision, which backfired. And she's actually completely right. Anyways, Jimmy meets with Jorge, who decides to change Jimmy's motto from justice matters most to just make money, while also asking him if he wants to be a friend of the cartel or not. I feel like by the time Lalo says this, nobody even needs confirmation anymore of him being the scariest character in the Breaking Bad universe. And this is proven in a couple episodes. Lalo calls Nacho inside and tells him to blow up Los Pollos Hermanos, which Gus agrees to do, and is a really cool scene. I like how much energy Nacho puts into destroying the restaurant like this was his idea or something, and Gus walking away from the explosion fits his character very well. Mike then tells Jimmy that he has to get Lalo out on bail, so Jimmy tells the DA that the evidence was tampered with, which makes them find out about Mike talking to the librarian. And this is what allows Lalo to get a bail set, even if it's for $7 million. But during this court case, Jimmy can't stop looking at Fred's grieving family, which I think is a perfect representation of his character in general. Jimmy isn't... well, actually, I think Chuck said it best.
My brother is not a bad person. He has a good heart. It's just... he can't help himself.
Jimmy feels incredibly bad for the family and hates that he's defending such a terrible guy, but he's getting paid, and that's all that matters to him in the end, and I think that's shown by this iconic shot as well. Then Jimmy has this great monologue against Howard, which I've seen in Discord gifs like 3,000 times now, but...
Lightning bolts shoot from my fingertips!
is one of my favorite quotes from him. JMM is just another addition to the peak that is Better Call Saul Season 5. Number 19, Koshada. It's probably a hot take to put something like this so high, but I'm sorry, the Huel scheme is just too good. We pick up right after Kim makes her new plan, and we get an amazing cold open where Jimmy takes the bus to Huel's hometown and pays people on the bus to sign cards, which sort of reveals the plan, but it still leaves enough mystery. Jimmy then mails all of the letters, which the judge of Huel's case goes crazy about when they're delivered. Suzanne decides to take the letters and read them, and she calls some of the phone numbers attached to them. All of these phone numbers are connected to burners Jimmy has in his office at the nail salon, and he waits in there with the camera crew for the calls to come in. The first call is for the makeup girl, and she has a great performance, but once Suzanne calls the pastor of the non-existent church, Jimmy goes off. This convinces Suzanne, and the sentence is brought down immensely, which makes Kim show the most affection she's shown to Jimmy in months. A big reason why I love this scheme, besides the fact that it's really entertaining, is that if the DA just did a bit more research, then it could have easily been over for not just Huel, but Jimmy and Kim as well, so they really got lucky. This scheme makes Kim want to do more stuff like this, which starts her downward spiral that ultimately leads to... yeah. That's easily the highlight of the episode, but the Super Lab stuff is pretty good too. Mike brings all of the guys to a strip club for some R&R, and he goes to the bar with
Werner Ziegler
to have a drink. After a few minutes, Mike has to go outside and send Kai home because he was being a pervert, and when he comes back in the bar,
Werner Ziegler
he's showing some random guys at the bar the design for Gus's Super Lab. This gets him in a lot of trouble with Mike, and he warns him not to do anything like this again. Thankfully, he doesn't, and is able to happily finish the job and go back to his wife in Germany. Anyways, there's also the final scene with the amazing introduction to the one and only Lalo Salamanca. I remember hearing so much about Lalo and just waiting and waiting for him to show up until he finally did in the 38th episode of the show. It's crazy how important and loved he is for only fully being in a single season. Number 18. Wiedershin, I think? How the fuck do you say that? Another amazing installment to late season 4. This is the first episode where Lalo's character is really shown, and he's already like top 3 in the entire show, even though he's in like 2 scenes. And I love both of those scenes. Lalo visits Hector in the retirement home and says this amazing line. He then gives Gus a visit in another amazing scene. Lalo is so good that he's able to become a top tier character in the show before even having an episode where he's the focus. Anyways, on to what this episode's actually about.
Werner Ziegler
misses his wife very much, and after a hard but successful excavation, all he wants to do is see her. He tells Mike that he could leave detailed instructions behind while he goes to Germany to see his wife for a few days, but Mike tells him to just finish the job.
Werner Ziegler
does this, and everything seems normal, but Mike comes back the next day and realizes that there's multiple cameras with dead pixels. This makes him very suspicious, so he goes into the warehouse and looks for
Werner Ziegler,
but he's nowhere to be found, and the top door is also unlocked, meaning that he escaped. I think I'm yet to actually give my thoughts on the season 4 lab subplot, since I usually just summarize this and don't actually talk about what I think. I enjoy the lab subplot, but it's not the craziest thing in the world to where I have to talk about how amazing it is, because it isn't. But it also isn't mid or bad in any way, because I have seen some people complain about it like it is. It's definitely not the highlight of most of the episodes it's in, but I still enjoy it, and it's cool seeing how the lab from Breaking Bad was made. Anyways, on to Jimmy's subplot. He goes to a committee meeting to appeal his bar status finally, and he seems to do very well. And while he obviously had to stress the truth about some things here, he seems to be honest about a lot of what he said. Jimmy is anxious to see what the results are, so he waits outside until they make their decision, which is not to reinstate his license. Jimmy gets really pissed about this and throws his briefcase at the wall, then calls Kim and meets her at the top of a parking lot. He starts explaining to her everything that happened and how he was as sincere as possible, but Kim realizes that it was because Jimmy said nothing about Chuck. Jimmy then starts going off on Kim by saying that he knows what she's really thinking right now, and we get probably their biggest argument of the whole show, and it's amazing. I know this whole video is just me complimenting the cinematography and acting of the show, but I genuinely can't express enough how good it is in this scene. And the fact that this scene won no Emmys... Wait... Oh, never mind. Kim says her iconic,
There you go. Kick a man when he's down.
Jimmy, you are always down.
Then she walks away. She was definitely right in that argument, by the way. Jimmy is just being a sore loser and taking it out on her. This is another prime example of why season 4 isn't the worst season. Number 17.
How to make a pimento cheese sandwich.
This is the highest rated episode of season 1, and I can definitely see why. This is a big episode for Jimmy and Chuck's relationship. We finally get the reveal that Chuck has been behind Howard's choice of HHM not hiring Jimmy this whole time, ever since he got a law degree. There are a lot of petty characters in this show, but Chuck might be the most petty. I mean, how do you push someone's career like that back for such a petty reason, especially your brother? This is definitely when I started to dislike Chuck on my original viewing of the show. The final scene where Jimmy confronts Chuck about this is really great. I think we all know by this point that Jimmy is a great lawyer, but him being able to put the puzzle pieces together and expose Chuck like that is incredible, especially since he's right. This scene also has incredible acting from both Bob Odenkirk and Michael McKean. Definitely some of Chuck's most quotable lines here. Now, all of that, just for me to say that I prefer the Mike subplot. This is Mike's first real venture into the crime business, I guess besides when he killed the 2 cops, but that doesn't really count. and it's amazing. The scene where Mike beats the fuck out of Trevor is easily one of the most iconic scenes in this entire show, and the dialogue is just so good. The scene with Price and Nacho is also incredible. Price is just a funny criminal. I can't think of a less threatening person than him, and he's the one selling drugs. Mike also gives a really great speech to Price in the car. As little Mike scenes as there are in season 1 compared to Jimmy, I honestly think he's easily the best part of season 1. Maybe it's because he doesn't appear as much as the other seasons, but pretty much every scene he's in is usually the highlight of the episode. And episodes where he's the focus like this one and 5-0 are top tier. One of the best earlier episodes for sure. Number 16, Witness. Season 3 takes a big leap in quality from the first episode to the second episode. What I was complaining about in 301 is how boring the Mike subplot was compared to how tense everything was with Jimmy and Chuck. This episode is able to keep Mike's subplot great as well, even if it intertwines with Jimmy. Mike continues to follow the tracker until it ends up at Los Pollos Hermanos, which is the first actual evidence of Gus being in the show that we get, and it's a cool reveal. Mike has Jimmy go inside Pollos Hermanos to watch the guy with the tracker and see if he puts anything in his bag. He ends up just having a normal breakfast, but after he throws out his garbage, Jimmy tries to look through the trash can to see if he left anything, only to be confronted by the one and only Gustavo Fring. This is the first time he actually appears in the series, and the only time he ever interacts with Jimmy, Breaking Bad included. Jimmy doesn't even know that Gus has anything to do with the criminal underground until Walt and Jesse come along. It's very refreshing to see Gus, and a great way to introduce his character. Then we get to the Jimmy side of the episode. Jimmy and Kim have an interview with Francesca, which is great to see, and Jimmy is very quick to hire her. Kim tries to get more interviews first, but Jimmy has a commercial that's about to air, so they hire her on the spot, and I love the Cracker Barrel lines. Then Ernie drives to Jimmy and Kim's office alone and calls Kim to come to his car. He ends up revealing to her that Chuck has a recording of Jimmy confessing to switching the numbers. If you're still doubting the fact that Ernie is the greatest fictional character ever written, then here's more proof. He gives up his job at HHM just to try to help Jimmy, even if it just causes worse things. Kim tells Jimmy this, and at first he just seems depressed about it, but he snaps and speeds over to Chuck's house. He breaks down Chuck's door, finds the tape, and destroys it. Little did he know that Chuck planned this all along, and Howard was in the back as a witness, alongside Chuck's PI. And the episode ends here. Easily one of the best endings of the whole show. Jimmy and Chuck's relationship just gets worse and worse every episode. Overall, this is definitely one of the best episodes. Introduces a goated character, not that one. Not that one either. And further expands on Chuck and Jimmy's dying relationship, which ultimately leads to the masterpiece that we'll get to later. Number 15, Mijo. This episode definitely creates a false sense of high action for the rest of the season, since there's only maybe an episode or two in the rest of the season with lots of action. But I'm not complaining. We get to see the return of Tuco, which we haven't seen since season 2 of Breaking Bad, which was 6 years before this. And it's of course great. Tuco managed to be one of the best characters in the whole show just by being in 4 episodes, so he's of course going to be entertaining when he returns. This is also one of the final times we ever see him. He knocks out the skateboarders, then brings them and Jimmy out to the desert to kill. He interrogates Jimmy and almost chops his fingers off until Jimmy lies and says he's an FBI agent. After this, we get the introduction of Nacho, where he starts asking Jimmy questions about what he's investigating, and we get this hilarious moment.
The task force is designated Operation Kingbreaker.
Kingbreaker. That makes me the king! Woohoo!
Then Jimmy admits that he's just a lawyer, and Nacho is able to reason with Tuco to let him go. Tuco agrees, but Jimmy still tries to convince him not to kill the skateboarders. This is an insane thing to do, especially when you're talking to the most psychotic person in the whole Breaking Bad universe, but he's somehow able to bargain down to the skateboarders getting one broken leg each. This introduces Jimmy's crazy lawyer skills, which we'll see all the way until the final episode, and it's a great first scene of it. There's also an incredible montage of Jimmy doing public cases, which introduces Bill, has more funny scenes with Mike and his stickers, and of course has great cinematography. This episode has 2 of the best scenes in the whole season, alongside great writing, cinematography, comedy, and the return of a beloved character, while introducing great new ones. Definitely a perfect episode. Number 14, Wexler v. Goodman. This episode right here is where Better Call Saul gets on a Breaking Bad Season 5 level of good. Let's get the cartel stuff out of the way, because there's barely any of it in this episode. We see Nacho for the first time in 2 episodes, and he reports to Gus about what Lalo is planning to do, which helps him and Mike prepare to deal with Lalo. After Gus and Victor leave, Nacho has a talk with Mike where he tells him about what Gus has been doing to him, like shooting him and threatening his dad. And I feel like it's impossible to not feel bad for Nacho. As much as you can say he's a bad person, he's been trying to get out of the game for the whole show, and his dad's life being at risk is the worst part. Nacho only has a few episodes left, so this episode is even more sad when thinking about that. Mike comes up with some ways to get the information of Lalo's car to the police, then Lalo's arrest at the end, which is the start of the downfall of literally everything in the show. Well, on to the Mesa Verde stuff. The camera crew tells Jimmy that his original plan would take weeks to film, so he decides to come up with a better idea, which isn't completely revealed, but we do get a great montage of random people Jimmy hired shooting their scenes. The next day, Jimmy decides to hire 2 hookers to approach Howard in a fancy restaurant and embarrass him publicly, which has absolutely nothing to do with the rest of this episode, but it's entertaining. Then we have Jimmy's meeting with Kim, Kevin, Paige, and Rich. Kim tells Jimmy that the offer is $45,000, which Jimmy opposes, then says he wants $4 million instead, which baffles everyone in the room, including Kim. Everyone tries leaving the room after this, but Jimmy decides to play the commercials he made, which have very clear defamation, but are still a threat to the bank. Then he accuses Mesa Verde of copyright infringement for their logo, and he leaves. As insane as this interaction is, and as pissed as Kim is, this ends up working in pretty much everyone's favor, besides Kim. because she can no longer trust Jimmy. The final scene sees them arguing at home, which at first is very reminiscent of a certain other scene later on, but then Kim instead proposes the idea of getting married instead. No pun intended. I really just love this episode because it's just Jimmy doing his thing, tricking everyone, including his girlfriend, so he gets his way. And in the most batshit insane way possible as well. The more the show goes on, the more you realize Chuck was right in like every long ass monologue he went on about Jimmy. Number 13, Something Unforgivable. I think the fact that this isn't even a top 2 season finale of the show tells you how good Better Call Saul is, because this episode is phenomenal. As good as both the subplots are here, I actually do prefer Jimmy and Kim, so I'll talk about Lalo's first. Lalo has Nacho drive him out to Mexico to his house, where lots of innocent people are living. Nacho tries getting service the whole time, and once he finally does, he gets a call telling him when and where to open a gate and escape. This call was sent by Gus because he hired some men to come to Lalo's house and kill him. Nacho and Lalo go to Don Eladio's house the next day, and Nacho has a conversation with him, talking about how he's going to move forward with running things for Hector. Then we get the final shootout scene where Nacho sits and talks with Lalo for a little, then goes inside and sets the kitchen on fire while getting drinks. He comes back out and Lalo notices smoke coming from the kitchen, so he runs there to see what's going on. As soon as he goes inside, Nacho unlocks the door and runs while letting the shooters come in. Lalo is able to realize relatively quickly what's going on, so he throws boiling water at one of the shooters' faces, then runs to a secret tunnel but leaves the entrance open so the shooters find it. This works, and Lalo is able to wrap around back to the entrance and kill the shooters with the machine gun without even aiming. One shooter is still alive by the end, and Lalo makes him call Gus and tell him that the job was done. Then, the final shot of the whole season is Lalo walking away, looking the angriest he's ever looked. And if he can be so psychotic while being completely chill, yeah, I don't have to say the rest. As good as this final scene is, the reason I still prefer the Jimmy and Kim subplot is because the other scenes with Lalo and Nacho aren't anything crazy. I like the scene at Eladio's house, but it doesn't have much significance since Nacho becomes a traitor like not even 24 hours later. And there are better scenes with Eladio in season 6 anyways. After Lalo gives both Jimmy and Kim a panic attack, Jimmy finally admits to Kim what happened in the desert and they hug. The scene's really sad and satisfying at the same time. They book a hotel for the night and Kim goes into work the next day, even though Jimmy tries convincing her to spend the day at the hotel. While at work, Kim runs into Howard, who has been in like 3 scenes at most this whole season, so I have no idea why he's still in the top cast. Kim tells Howard that she quit Schweikert in Mesa Verde, so Howard asks her to give him a minute. Howard reveals to Kim that he offered Jimmy a job at HHM and he threw bowling balls at his car and hired prostitutes to go after Howard in public in return. Instead of being disturbed or disappointed in Jimmy, Kim just laughs in Howard's face, which is wild. Then Howard says the craziest line of the whole show.
You know who really knew Jimmy? Chuck.
I think Howard saying Kim left these jobs because of Jimmy is a bit disrespectful, but everything else he says is completely true, and it will sadly be proven in the next few episodes. This episode really is just Kim's descent into slipping Kimmy, and okay, I'm sorry, I'll never say that again. We've been getting hints that Kim enjoys doing scenes like Jimmy since season 2, and it was expanded upon more in season 4, but this is where it gets real. Kim tells Jimmy about her interaction with Howard at the courthouse, and they spend the whole night coming up with different schemes they could pull off on Howard. By the end of the night, Kim is talking about how much money they can make from Sandpiper if Howard did something terrible and had a quote-unquote career setback. She seems very serious about this, and Jimmy tells her that's a bad idea and that Howard doesn't deserve something like that. When Jimmy is telling you that a scheme is a bad idea, I think the scheme might be a bad idea. Something Unforgivable manages to be a great closure to season 5 while being a great segue into season 6. Amazing as always. Number 12. Rock and a Hard Place. Definitely an interesting episode. As you can see, I gave it a 10, so I don't exactly think it's overrated, but it's not one of my higher 10s. What I don't understand is this being the 4th highest rated episode of the whole show, which I don't agree with at all. Anyways, Rock and Hard Place is the send-off to Nacho's character, who has been present since the 2nd episode of the entire series. Throughout the whole show, Nacho goes from a feared antagonist to Jimmy in season 1, to a regretful man that wants to be out of the game in seasons 2 and 3. Then being forced to become a rat for Gus and be used by different sides of the cartel in seasons 4 and 5, to having nobody on his side and a death sentence from the very start by season 6. I think we can all agree that Nacho isn't the greatest person of all time. He's definitely done some shitty things over the years, but the amount of regret he shows and the pain he goes through by putting others in pain in the latter half of the show is a sign of him hating what he had become and wanting to leave, but he was already too far in and had no choice. And what made it 100 times worse, both Hector and Gus used Nacho's innocent father as tactics to scare him, which is the main reason why he allowed for his death to happen in the first place. The scene of Nacho calling his dad for the last time is easily one of the saddest in the entire show. Nacho practically crying on one side while his clueless dad is fed up with him and tells him to turn himself in on the other side. Nacho's relationship with his dad is another reason why his character is so tragic, because all his father tells him throughout the show is to leave the cartel, turn himself in, and go to the police. And as much as Nacho wants to leave, he can't, so his dad continues to be disappointed in him and not understand. Nacho comes back to Albuquerque through a truck and has one final drink with Mike, which is another amazing scene. Mike has been rooting for Nacho this whole time, even standing up to the psychotic Gus many times just to try and get Nacho out of the game and his father's safety. Mike and Nacho's relationship even goes back to the first season before Mike was involved with the cartel at all, which adds to their final look in the next scene being heartbreaking. Then we get to Nacho's death scene, which I will admit is one of the best scenes in the entire show, and is why this episode is a 10 and not like a 9.5. Nacho is able to finally say what he's been building up for 6 seasons, since he's gonna die anyways, and it's both satisfying and depressing at the same time. He doesn't rat out Gus because he needs his father to be safe, but he rats himself out to Hector by telling him that
I put you in that chair. Oh yeah, your heart meds. I switched them for sugar pills.
After this, Nacho stabs Bolsa with a piece of glass he snuck, then steals his gun and holds him at gunpoint. Everyone points their guns at Nacho, thinking he'll kill Bolsa, but Nacho instead shoots himself in the head. You might wonder why Nacho didn't just shoot Bolsa, then get shot by everyone else, and I think he doesn't do this for 2 reasons. One is that Nacho would rather kill himself than get killed by the people he despises the most, and 2 is that Nacho isn't a killer, and he never was. Sure, Nacho has killed a couple people in the past, but it was either out of self-defense or because he was forced to. But I think it's obvious that deep down, Nacho isn't a bad person. He just got mixed up with the wrong people, and by the time he tried fixing it, it was too late. And the cherry on top for this scene, the Salamanca cousins give Hector a gun, and the episode ends with him shooting Nacho's dead body. I hate to admit that I laughed at that. I know I didn't talk about Jimmy at all. All that's happening is that Lalo finally got caught, and Suzanne wants Jimmy to come down and admit that he was forced to be his lawyer. I think we know what the main attraction of this episode was. Now, the main reason why I don't think this is a top 5 or even top 10 episode of the show is because I saved those spots for some episodes where every single scene is phenomenal. And I think there are really only a few hard-hitting scenes like that in this episode. But those scenes are very good. Still one of the best of the whole show, though. Number 11, Bad Choice Road. Usually the aftermath episodes of big moments in this show pales in comparison to their predecessors, and while I do prefer Bagman to Bad Choice Road, it's by a very small margin. The episode starts off with a montage of Mike and Jimmy walking after killing the final gang member, and Jimmy finally gets service, so he's able to call Kim in a very wholesome moment. Mike and Jimmy make it back to town, and Jimmy turns in the $7 million, which catches the eyes of the prosecutors, and they start investigating more into Jorge de Guzman. Lalo is let out and tells Jimmy that Kim went to see him when Jimmy was in the desert. When Jimmy gets home, he tells Kim to stay away from Lalo because she's not in the game, and she thankfully takes this advice to heart and never interacts with him again. Kim takes off the next day to care for Jimmy, but Jimmy wants to avoid any questions from Kim about what happened, so he decides to go back into work, so Kim does as well. For like 10 minutes until she decides that she's done with striking her Coakley and quits her job. Then quits Mesa Verde as well. This is now the second time that Kim has worked incredibly hard for a job just to quit it like 2 years later. And it won't be the last. But at least there was an actual reason for HHM. She kind of just quit this because she felt like it. Jimmy talks with Mike after work and he has this great line.
I can't believe there's like over 1 billion people on this planet. And the only person I have to talk about this to is you.
Then Kim comes home and breaks the news to Jimmy, who tries talking her out of it. Jimmy makes some really good points here, but keeps getting called while talking to Kim, and he declines all of them. Whenever this happens, you know some shit's about to go down. A knock comes from the door, and Kim answers it while Jimmy answers his phone, and Mike tells Jimmy to leave his phone on call and put it down. Jimmy is confused until he realizes that Lalo's the one at the door. Lalo invites himself in and sits down on the couch, insists for Kim to stay, then asks Jimmy what happened in the desert. Jimmy explains it again with more detail, then Lalo says,
"Tell me again."
After this, Kim stands up for Jimmy and tells Lalo everything that Jimmy did for him, and now he's accusing Jimmy of lying to him. Some of the things Kim says to Lalo here are fucking insane. You'd be dead if you said this to an actual cartel member in real life. Mike also has a sniper rifle pointed at Lalo from outside the apartment for if he does anything. After getting destroyed by Kim, Lalo leaves and goes back to Mexico. The final scene of Kim standing up for Jimmy is insane, and for the 1000th time, Ray Seahorn's acting is unbelievable. Not saying Bob or Tony's acting aren't great either, but she can really adapt to any situation. Easily the best aftermath episode in the whole show, if you even want to call it that, since the stakes are incredibly high in this episode as well as Bagman. Number 10, Nailed. Nailed's easily Season 2's magnum opus. This isn't a one-sided episode, but I think Jimmy's plot's definitely the main attraction here. Let's just get Mike out of the way. The cold open is him robbing $250,000 out of one of Hector's trucks, which is a crazy-ass way to start the episode. Mike meets up with Nacho the next day, where Nacho questions him about what happened and reveals to him that an innocent person was killed due to his robbery. This was definitely another incentive for Mike to stop taking half measures. Anyways, Chuck and Howard go to a hearing with Mesa Verde, where the whole 1261 debacle starts. Pretty much everyone besides Chuck acknowledges that it's 1261, but Chuck will die on the hill that it was 1216. Howard and Chuck go back to Chuck's place after losing Mesa Verde, and Chuck looks legitimately mentally ill by how he's screaming that it was 1216. Then he puts the puzzle pieces together that it was Jimmy, and he has Ernie call Kim to get her Mesa Verde files from her. The scene makes you realize how smart Jimmy actually is. At first it seems like he's just doing this so Chuck loses Mesa Verde, and that does happen. But Jimmy hits Chuck in his weak spot, his ego. He knows that Chuck couldn't possibly fathom being wrong, and he was right, because instead of just accepting the loss, Chuck puts together the puzzle pieces and realizes that it was Jimmy's plan all along. Kim shows up with Jimmy, and Chuck tells them word for word, bar for bar, letter for letter, Exactly what Jimmy did. I really wouldn't be able to tell you if Jimmy is a better lawyer than Chuck or not. Both of them are actually insane at their craft. You'd be able to tell that they're brothers from their skill alone. Kim of course sides with Jimmy and is brutally honest with Chuck about how much of an asshole he is to Jimmy. But once they get in the car, Kim punches Jimmy, showing that she knows Chuck is right. Later, Kim warns Jimmy to dot all of his I's and cross all of his T's, which makes Jimmy realize that the guy at the printing shop is a loose end. He rushes to the printing shop, but Ernie is already there questioning Lance. Ernie leaves to get Chuck, which gives Jimmy the time to bribe Lance. Chuck comes back and questions Lance, but he stays true to the bribe. Chuck is frustrated and he starts reacting to his condition more, so much so that he hits his head on the counter and falls to the ground. I know the scene became a meme, but it's still a really great cliffhanger, especially seeing Jimmy hesitate to go in the shop or not. After all of that, and I still haven't mentioned the best scene of this episode so far, the camera crew scene. I told you they steal the show every single time, even in an already perfect episode. They go to an elementary school playground to record the iconic commercial of Jimmy in front of the American flag, and we get the introduction of the makeup girl. Jimmy also sings the Pina Colada song, which might be the greatest scene in television history.
If you like pina coladas, getting caught in the rain.
We definitely needed this scene in an episode filled with drama, and it's just the cherry on top of this phenomenal episode. Number 9. 5-0. Definitely one of the more depressing episodes. 5-0 is basically a completely dedicated Mike episode. Jimmy is here for a couple scenes, but Mike is still the main focus of these scenes. This pauses the season 1 plotline to focus on Mike's backstory, and it's incredible. Mike gets interrogated by the Philly police, and he knows that they know that he killed Maddie's partners, so they interrogate him. But Mike has Jimmy spill coffee on one of the officer's shirts so he can steal his notepad. And once he sees this, he goes to Stacy's house and asks her if she called the cops. They have an argument with some incredible acting from both of them, then Mike finally tells her the truth about Maddie, and we get a flashback of the night that Mike killed Maddie's partners. I think we all know from Breaking Bad that Mike is a really smart and strategical guy, and he clearly has always been like this, since his plan to kill the cops completely worked, and it was smart as fuck. The scene where he shoots them is so cold and very deserving, seeing how big of assholes these guys are. It cuts back to Mike giving a speech to Stacy, and we get multiple great quotes from Mike. And overall, just an amazing scene from him. Definitely a huge highlight for season 1, especially if you don't like the slower pace of Better Call Saul. Number 8. Waterworks. The penultimate episode of Better Call Saul answers so many unanswered questions and raises the tension so high for the series finale. For being the second to last episode of Better Call Saul, it actually focuses more on Kim, which I think is necessary. Throughout the whole show, the majority of fans thought Kim would die at some point due to not being in Breaking Bad, but ever since Point and Shoot, there have been more and more hints about Kim's whereabouts during and after Breaking Bad, alongside some evidence that she's not dead. The episode shows a lot of Kim living her new life in Florida, where she is very clearly unhappy. When asked to make decisions multiple times, she never gives a straightforward answer, which I think is because she wants to stay low-key in her life and not get too involved with anything really, since she knows how much damage she was able to do in her previous life. Then, one day at work, Kim gets a call from Gene, which is the same call that was shown in the previous episode, but nothing was said in the call was actually revealed. This time we get to see the whole call, and Kim tells Gene to turn himself in. Gene then makes a pretty good point, telling Kim that she should turn herself in if she thinks he should turn himself in that badly, so she does. She flies to Albuquerque and goes to Cheryl's house and gives her a paper that confesses to everything that her and Jimmy did against Howard, and everything regarding Lalo, Gus, and Mike. The scene is super sad, especially when Cheryl finds out that Howard was shot. She gets very mad at Kim and tells her that she can sue her in civil court, which Kim agrees with, but it doesn't seem like she ever does. Later that day, Kim gets on a bus back to the airport and breaks down into tears. Another great scene and a really hard one to watch. At least someone has remorse for their actions. Speaking of not showing remorse, Gene is currently robbing a cancer patient and damn near almost hits him in the head with the man's dead dog's ashes so he can get away, which I think shows he's really stooped to a new low. Gene is about to walk out but sees that there's a cop car behind Jeff, so he stays inside. Jeff's only solution is to start driving and crash into a car so the police follow him and Gene can get away safely. Jeff then gets arrested because the police suspect him of robbing the house, so Gene calls Marion and tells her about the situation. Marion gets confused on why Jeff called Gene first, and Gene slips up in the call by revealing that he used to be in Albuquerque. So Marion does some research and finds out who Gene really is. Gene comes to her house, and when he finds out that she knows, she threatens to call the cops, so Gene pulls the phone out of the wall and makes very threatening gestures with the phone cable. So Marion presses her life alert button and says Saul Goodman is in her house. Then Gene runs away and the episode ends. Easily one of the lowest moments Gene ever hits. It's always with the elderly man. And this final scene is so good. We're finally getting Jimmy's downfall and it's done so well. And I haven't even mentioned the Jesse scene yet. In a flashback to the Saul Goodman timeline, Kim goes to his office to sign divorce papers and Saul seems very salty about their breakup. He tells Kim to have a nice life and acts like an asshole to Francesca as always, telling her to bring the next person in, which happens to be Emilio from Breaking Bad. Kim walks outside and starts smoking, and the camera pans over to none other than Jesse fucking Pinkman. I know that Walt and Jesse were in the previous episode, but I would argue that this scene is even cooler, since we didn't know that Jesse ever interacted with Kim. We also get the information that Kim defended Combo. Hearing Jesse's voice again is just so great, and Kim's final line is amazing too.
This guy, any good?
When I knew him, he was.
The emotional value of this episode really seals the deal, plus the final scene, the Jesse scene, just make Waterworks such an incredible late series episode. That definitely makes the hype for the finale even stronger. Number 7. Fun and Games. The real finale of the Better Call Saul timeline. The 4 episodes after this one focus on the timelines during Breaking Bad and after Breaking Bad, so for the main timeline that this show follows, this is the finale. And a fitting one. I mean, I think it was pretty obvious that the events that went down in 607 and 608 were the last straw, and this episode is able to show that in the most devastating ways possible. There's not a single scene in this episode that I added points for because it was funny or shocking. It's literally all sad. The cartel plotlines are concluded in the beginning of the episode, so there's more time for Jimmy and Kim's plotline. Gus goes to a meeting at Eladio's place, where he asks Gus about Lalo's death, because Hector is claiming that Gus was responsible for it. After some consideration, Eladio doesn't seem to believe it, so he makes Hector go inside, and we get one final line from him.
Miré los ojos. El odio. Un poquito no está mal, siempre y cuando no te olvides de quién manda.
Gus goes home and tells Mike to start looking for new construction workers to finish the lab. Gus's final scene of the entire show is at a bar where he starts bonding with a man there, and I think this is a fitting final scene for Gus because we really didn't get much development on Gus's sexuality, which was a big question. And I think the scene perfectly explains it. If I'm being honest, I wasn't as big of a fan of Gus in Better Call Saul on my second viewing. I think the reason I liked him so much on my first viewing is because of how much I loved him in Breaking Bad, and seeing him here was just really cool. But I feel like one of the best parts about Gus's character in Breaking Bad was how scary he was. And he really isn't scary at all in Better Call Saul. I'll still take a Gus spinoff though. Nevertheless, this is still the perfect way to chronologically wrap up his character. Then we have Mike. Yes, he isn't Saul Gunn, but that's a flashback to Bagman, so this is his final appearance in this timeline. Mike goes to Nacho's dad's shop to inform him of Nacho's passing, and this scene is just so depressing. You can see Nacho's father start to tear up, but he still says that everyone in the cartel is the same. And he's very wrong, yet very right at the same time. Now to the worst yet best part of this whole episode. The cold open is probably my favorite scene, easily the saddest montage in the whole show. It goes from Jimmy and Kim having their normal days at work to Mike and his men cleaning up Howard's body with some of the most diabolical transitions of all time. Some time passes and Jimmy and Kim go to Howard's memorial at HHM. And just seeing all the pictures of Howard and all of the people there make this scene sad enough already. Jimmy and Kim talk to Cheryl, Howard's widow, and she's in denial that Howard was a drug addict. I mean, if she barely interacted with Howard in the first place, then I don't see how she couldn't have missed it, but Kim doubles down on this by making up a lie, saying that she saw Howard sniffing coke a few years ago. Cheryl asks Cliff if he ever saw anything like this, and when he doesn't deny it, she walks away crying. This whole episode is really hard to get through, but this scene especially is what almost got me. Kim and Jimmy go back to work, and Kim goes to a case that she requests to resign from. The judge demands that she gives an explanation, and she reveals that she has quit the law. Once Jimmy gets home, he's already heard the news and starts screaming at Kim to change her decision. Kim starts telling Jimmy that they're bad for each other, and that they're fine separate, but together they ruin people's lives. Jimmy opens his bedroom and sees that Kim's already packing her stuff, after which Kim reveals that everything is her fault because she was aware that Lalo was alive, but didn't tell Jimmy because she didn't want to ruin the fun she was having with him. This is the real final scene of the Jimmy McGill timeline, since he fully turns into Saul Goodman after breaking up with Kim. This is the other scene that almost got me, since Jimmy and Kim's relationship is what this whole show has been basically built on, and seeing it fall apart is just so sad, especially seeing how in love they really were. The final scene of the episode is also cool, showing Saul Goodman waking up in his mansion with the hooker in his bed, and you can tell that this is definitely some time into the Saul Goodman timeline. Whether it's before or during Breaking Bad, we don't know, but it's perfect for showing how Jimmy McGill turned into Saul Goodman, especially after the scene with Kim. And if none of the Gene stuff ever existed, this would be the perfect finale of Better Call Saul in my opinion, but I'm glad it's not. Easily the saddest episode of the entire show, not even a competition. Number 6, Bagman. If Salud's the Better Call Saul episode of Breaking Bad, then Bagman is the Breaking Bad episode of Better Call Saul. You won't find another episode in the show with action like this, maybe besides Point and Shoot. And the plot is standalone as well. I think if you were to give a person who has never watched Better Call Saul any episode of the show, they would most likely enjoy this one the most. And for good reason. Basically, Lalo needs someone to get his bail that won't raise suspicion and won't steal the money. And Jimmy is the guy for this. Jimmy politely declines and Lalo says he'll find someone else, but Jimmy changes his mind and tells Lalo that he'll do it for $100,000. And Lalo excitedly agrees. Jimmy tells Kim about this later on and she gets really concerned, but Jimmy tells her not to worry and that nothing bad will happen. Jimmy goes to the border the next day and speaks fluent Spanish to the Salamanca cousins, then takes the money and starts driving away while happily singing. There might be a few cars tracing behind him, but it's no big deal. All that happens is they corner him, which forces him to get outside and give a man the keys to his trunk where the bail money is. Then the man tells another guy to kill Jimmy, and right before he almost gets shot in the face, an anonymous figure decides to shoot all of the gang members from a distance. Very tame scene. The anonymous figure ends up being Howard and The anonymous figure ends up being Mike, and they drive away in Jimmy's car with all the money, until it breaks down, so they have to walk the rest of the distance. The long way. so they don't get caught by the one gang member that escapes. Jimmy and Mike push the Suzuki Esteem off a cliff after Jimmy takes his world's second best lawyer again mug out, which is a sad scene since the car has been there since episode 1, and they start heading home. Meanwhile, Kima is very nervous and pretends to be Lalo's lawyer so she can talk to him and ask him where Jimmy is. Lalo just makes a joke out of the whole situation in classic Lalo fashion and doesn't tell her shit. Very helpful. Anyways, Jimmy and Mike keep walking, and Jimmy tries to give up after a while, but Mike spots the gang member in his car, so he gets ready with his gun while Jimmy decides to act as bait and start walking in the middle of the road. This works, and Mike is able to shoot the car right before it hits Jimmy, which is the most Breaking Bad-like scene in the whole show, and a great scene at that. If you're a big fan of more action-based stuff like Breaking Bad, you'll love this episode. If you're a big fan of more story-based stuff like Better Call Saul, you'll love this episode. It's the best of both worlds, and a massive point in the story of the show. Easily a top-tier episode. Number 5, Winter. I like the fact that even though Season 4 is the most hated season, everyone can collectively agree that Winter is nothing short of a masterpiece. This episode might have the best mixture of comedy, action, and emotion out of any episode on the whole show. The episode starts off with a flashback to when Jimmy passed the bar, and everyone goes to karaoke later on, which includes the GOAT Ernie! These last 18 episodes have been so hard without you, Ernesto. Please know that you're missed. AMC, please greenlight your attorney Ernie, I'm begging you. Anyways, Jimmy starts singing the Winner Takes All and convinces Chuck to get on stage and sing with him, and it's pretty sad knowing everything that happens between them. And the lyrics match it as well. They go home after this, and a drunk Jimmy falls asleep in the same bed as Chuck, which is the final shot of the scene. And this whole cold open connects with the episode. Speaking of the actual episode, it's based on Jimmy trying to convince everyone that he loves Chuck so that he'll be able to get his bar certification back. He fake cries at Chuck's grave, which is pretty funny. He anonymously donates tens of thousands of dollars to HHM to dedicate their library to Chuck. And he has the camera crew spread the fact that Jimmy was the donator, which is also very funny and smart as fuck. Then he goes to one of Chuck's scholarship meetings at HHM, and he decides to vote for a girl that had some shoplifting charges in the past. He tries to vouch for her as much as he can, but nothing will get her that scholarship, and he knows it. So he runs to her before she leaves and tells her that she can do whatever she wants, and that she's better than the guys at HHM, basically describing himself in the second person. Jimmy then breaks down in his car after, which is sad to see, and after this he decides that instead of using the speech at his appeal, he'll read Chuck's letter to the committee. Jimmy and Kim arrive the next day, and as Jimmy starts to read Chuck's letter, he realizes that it won't do anything, so he makes a speech about him and Chuck's relationship. This is a really sad speech that seems very authentic when it happens, and makes a few people in the room cry, including Kim. But once the appeal is over, Jimmy basically reveals that he didn't mean all of that, and he just wants to get his appeal back. Someone comes over to tell Jimmy that he's getting reinstated, and we get one of the most iconic scenes of the whole show.
大丈夫ですよ。他の書類はもう用意してあります。いいぞ。ねえ、ちょっとジミー、何？
Saul Goodman.
This is easily one of the best episodes for Jimmy's character in the whole show, and is a huge turning point for the show. And I haven't even mentioned the other subplot yet.
Burner.
Okay, fine, I won't do it for this episode. It's on the run, and Mike assigns all of Gus's men different things to do for finding Werner. But Mike already seems to get a lead when he gets to Travel Wire, and the clerk, Fred, admits to him that Werner was there. Mike goes through the security footage, which doesn't help him much besides the fact that Werner got into a taxi, which helps him find out that Werner's at a resort waiting for his wife. But little does Mike know that he's being followed by none other than Lalo Salamanca. Lalo follows Mike after he leaves Travel Wire, but Mike catches on, so he comes up with a quick plan. Mike pulls into a parking lot while chewing multiple pieces of gum and parks. Lalo follows him and parks as well. Mike takes the gum out of his mouth and flatly puts it into the wrappers, then waits for someone else to start driving out of the parking lot. And once they do, he cuts them off so he can get out first, and Lalo follows. Mike then puts his ticket back into the machine, but also puts the gum in as well, which jams the machine and leaves Lalo incredibly behind while the other guy is trying to get the machine to work. You would think Lalo would just give up here, but he of course decides to start driving back and hit the guy in front of him because he's a sociopath. But he loses Mike. So Lalo goes back to Travel Wire and talks to Fred, asking if he can see the footage of Werner. When Fred says no, Lalo climbs through the ceiling, jumps down behind the counter, and kills Fred. Lalo is able to determine where Werner is through this footage, and he calls the resort and tries to get information out of Werner about Gus's lab, but Mike is there before he's able to elaborate and tells him to get changed. Then this scene happens. Yes, I cried. Yes, it's the best scene in the show up till this point besides chicanery. No, I don't want to talk about it. Anyways, Winter is one of the most climactic points in the whole show, and it's executed to perfection. Bravo, Vince. Number 4. Plan and Execution. I really don't know where to start with this episode. It's the highest rated episode of the show for a reason. Plan and Execution is the mid-season finale of season 6, and it succeeds in every single aspect. The episode starts with Lalo coming out of the sewers like a fucking ninja turtle, after which he goes to a convenience store to take a shower. Then he takes a nap in his car, and then he goes right back in the sewers, and it's then revealed that he's watching over Gus's laundromat. The next few acts of the episode are completely dedicated to D-Day, which starts with Jimmy rushing to get everyone in the camera crew together to retake the pictures. The photo kid teaching in class and being the nerdiest guy ever is so funny to me, and the photo reshoot is amazing. I know I was complaining earlier about how the suspense for D-Day got a bit annoying, but I think it works very well in this scene because of the frantic energy and the fact that everything is revealed in the next scene anyways. What's also quickly revealed is that Howard's PI was a double agent all along that was really working for Jimmy, and I think the fact that this is right before the big reveal makes the suspense even greater, because now we can get a solid idea on what's happening. Then the scheme happens, and the fact that this isn't even the craziest scene in this episode says something, because I was speechless on my first and second viewings of it. On my first viewing I was mostly just in shock and I couldn't believe how Jimmy and Kim had pulled this off, but on my second viewing it kinda just made me sad. Everyone at this meeting, who are all innocent and decent people such as Cliff, Rich, and Irene may I add, now see this guy that they've considered a colleague for many years and one of the most professional people they know and turn into a cocaine addict that freaks out over everything and blames everything on Jimmy. As much as Howard may be right, it doesn't matter. Nothing will change what happened at that meeting, and it's honestly heartbreaking to see. It's so reminiscent of the chicanery scene, but even with that scene, it was more of a situation of Jimmy or Chuck, no other way around it. And it seemed like that's what Jimmy had to do at that point in time, even if it was because of some shitty things he had done in the past. There's literally zero reason for Jimmy and Kim to be doing this to Howard besides for money and for fun. Sure, Howard does have his points of being a dick. Howard may not have let Jimmy onto HHM, even if it was a decision completely controlled by Chuck. Howard may have put Kim in doc review, even though he funded her multiple years of law school, also besides the fact that Kim ended up leaving HHM anyways, and Howard decided to pay for the rest of her loans off himself as a kind gesture for everything she did for HHM. And yes, Howard did play a role in Chuck's suicide by paying him millions of dollars just so he wasn't able to do the one thing that he still had in his life at that point. This one seems a bit more serious than the others, but Howard still suffered immense grief over what he did to Chuck, and even tried comforting Jimmy by telling him that it was his own fault, not Jimmy's. And even then, Jimmy decided to completely agree with Howard, which put him into more of a depression than he already was in. In the multiple seasons where we barely even saw Howard, he had become a mess. He had depression and saw a therapist all the way up to a few episodes before this. HHM went in the drain and he had to clean up the mess that happened while going into debt. His marriage started to fall apart as well. It seemed like Howard had definitely received more than enough punishments for his actions, but here he is, losing even more clients and completely ruining his reputation with not just whole law firms, but people that he considered friends. Well, before we get to the final scene, we need to talk about Lalo. Lalo records a tape on a camera addressed at Donald Audio where he details what his plans are for the night so he can truly expose Gus to him. Lalo tries calling Hector after this, but he realizes that Gus has bugged his phone. Lalo hangs up instantly and gets pissed off, but he quickly thinks of a new plan, which is to go back to his original plan. He calls Hector and tells him this, but everyone that's working for Gus assumes that this means that Lalo is going after Gus. So Mike has to take his guys off of the less important targets to protect Gus. Back to Jimmy and Kim, Howard shows up to their apartment at night to confront them. He seems distraught and drunk, and Jimmy and Kim still act like they're unaware of what Howard's talking about. Howard then goes on a monologue that rivals Chuck's, where he talks about how his professional career is ruined, how Jimmy and Kim do this because they get off on it, how everything in his life has gone to shit yet that he's still able to land on his feet, and most of all, how Jimmy and Kim are sociopaths. This monologue is honestly heartbreaking, but suddenly, a candle flickers, signaling that the door is just open. Jimmy looks behind Howard, then holds Kim in fear. Kim tells Howard that he has to leave, and it's revealed that none other than Lalo Salamanca is behind Howard. Howard asks Lalo who he is while both Kim and Jimmy beg to leave, then Lalo pulls a gun out and everyone goes silent. As soon as Howard starts saying how he should leave, he's instantly shot in the head by Lalo, and the episode ends with...
Oh my god! No! Oh my god! No, no!
Okay. Let's talk.
I started to watch Breaking Bad coincidentally on the day that Better Call Saul ended, so when I eventually got up to this, I thankfully was able to watch Point and Shoot right after and not wait 2 months for it, but for whoever did, my condolences out to you. The craziest thing about this scene for me is that I literally got spoilers that Lalo killed Howard, and I was still in complete shock when it happened. For its whole runtime, Better Call Saul has always relied on two completely different storylines, one having to do with lawyers and the other having to do with crime. Sure, Mike and Jimmy would occasionally interact, but before season 5, they were mainly completely separate. In season 5, Jimmy started working with Lalo, but that was still really it. Kim interacted with him a few times, but it still didn't fully affect the story of their plotline. Plan and execution is where both plotlines hit their climax in the worst timing possible, and Jimmy and Kim basically get instant karma for what they did to Howard. This was easily one of the best endings and cliffhangers to any episode in the whole Breaking Bad universe, which is saying something since Breaking Bad's kind of the king of cliffhangers. While I wouldn't say it's my #1 favorite episode of the show, I completely understand why that's the popular opinion. A goated episode of television in general. Number 3. point and shoot. I know having point and shoot above plan and execution is a hot take, but to me it's just slightly better. The cold open shows Howard's car open at a beach with music blasting and his wallet and ring in the car. This being the first thing we see in the whole episode after that ending just makes it so much worse. Then the actual episode starts directly where plan and execution left off. Jimmy and Kim are trying to contain themselves after what the fuck just happened, and Lalo has them sit down. He tells Jimmy that he has to drive to Gus's house with Lalo's car, then take a gun and shoot him as soon as he opens the door. And he has an hour to do this while Lalo waits with Kim at the apartment. Jimmy then tries to convince Lalo that Kim should instead be the one to do it, because she looks a lot less suspicious. At first this just seems like Jimmy is just being a pussy, but it's actually to protect Kim so she doesn't have to stay with Lalo. Kim catches on to this quickly and starts making a scene begging Jimmy to not do this, so Lalo just gives in and lets Kim do the job. While Kim drives to Gus's house, Lalo ties Jimmy to a chair while telling him everything that has happened since he last saw him, and he thinks Jimmy has something to do with this since Nacho was the one to introduce him to Jimmy. And Jimmy starts begging for his life and telling Lalo he had nothing to do with it, so Lalo puts a cloth in Jimmy's mouth and leaves. Jimmy tries moving his chair to get out, but ends up falling on the ground and having to look at Howard's dead body. Meanwhile, Kim arrives at Gus's house, and we get a shot that is very reminiscent of the scene from Breaking Bad where Walt tries to kill Gus at his house as well. Funny how this is one of my highest rated episodes and that was my lowest rated episode. Anyways, Kim knocks on the door and pulls her gun out, but Mike comes from behind and brings her inside. Kim tells Mike that Lalo is at the apartment and he's going to kill Jimmy, so Mike gets Tyrus and his guys to go to Jimmy's apartment with him while Victor stays at Gus's house with Kim. Gus calls Victor and asks to talk to Kim, and through this call he realizes that Lalo is not at Jimmy's apartment, so he decides to bring a few men to the laundromat. He arrives and suspiciously looks around, then realizes that the fan is slower than usual. And as he turns around, Lalo is there and shoots all of Gus's men dead. Lalo makes Gus put his hands behind his back, and while this is happening, Gus gets a call from Mike, who has arrived at Jimmy's apartment, and realizes that Lalo isn't there. Lalo answers the call and throws the phone away, which makes Mike and his guys rush to the laundromat. Lalo, knowing that he has limited time, continues his video message to Don Eladio while having Gus at gunpoint and forcing him to give Lalo a tour of the lab. They get to the washing machine that hides the lab, and when Gus doesn't open the secret entrance, Lalo casually fucking shoots Gus in the chest, knowing that he has a bulletproof vest on. Gus finally gives in and opens the secret entrance. They get down to the lab and Gus tells Lalo that he can't kill him yet because he still needs to tell Eladio what he thinks of him. Gus then goes off and calls Eladio a fat pig that does terrible business, and it's very reminiscent of Nacho's final monologue. Except that Gus isn't the one to die, because he steps on a cable which disconnects the power, then runs to the other side of the lab while Lalo is shooting at him, grabs a hidden gun, and shoots Lalo to the ground. Lalo then dies laughing while coughing up blood. I know there are some people that don't like Lalo's death, but I actually think it's very fitting. It was obvious that Lalo had to die because he definitely would be a Breaking Bad if he wasn't, so having him die to Gus, the guy whose one and only goal in life is to wipe out all of the cartel, in the lab, the place that Lalo's been obsessing about since he was first introduced. Also, as much as you've been able to tell throughout the last couple seasons how much Lalo and Gus hate each other, they were never actually able to have a one-on-one confrontation where they didn't have to act like friends, so this was the perfect send-off to Lalo, in my opinion. I know his death is kind of similar to Mike's, which I talked about my dislike for in my Breaking Bad video, but I think his death is a lot more fitting due to the reasons I stated. Anyways, Jimmy and Kim reconcile hours later with a sad-ass hug. Then Mike tells them everything that's going to happen regarding Howard. Hearing Mike give these instructions to Jimmy and Kim is like a walk of shame for them, because all of this happened due to their plan and execution. Let me get two amazing cherries on top for this disaster. Seeing Howard's dead corpse be stuffed into Jimmy and Kim's refrigerator, and seeing Howard be buried with Lalo, the guy that murdered him, in the lab, signifying that Howard got involved with the game in the wrong place at the wrong time, all because of Jimmy and Kim's actions. What an episode. Something I will say when comparing plan and execution and point and shoot is that I don't think any scenes in this episode compare with the Sandpiper or Howard's death scenes at plan and execution, but I think this episode's overall better, mainly for the same reason that I had for the episode I made number 1 in my Breaking Bad video. As much as I love character building and cinematography and whatnot, I watch a show to be entertained, and this one is just simply more entertaining to me. Number 2. Chicanery. What is there to say about chicanery that hasn't already been said? This is the episode that I've been quoting to myself since I first started my rewatch, and now I'll probably continue to do so even more. Chicanery is easily the most praised and most iconic pre-season 6 episode of the entire show, and it would be hard to not see why. Better Call Saul is obviously a much slower show than Breaking Bad, so the episodes like this is what the show is able to build up to, which makes the payoff so fucking good. The cold open is a flashback to when Chuck first got EHS, and he invites Jimmy and Rebecca over to dinner. Rebecca takes a phone call and Chuck decides to slap the phone out of her hand and tell her that it's bad manners instead of just telling her about the EHS, which is a great scene to know about after seeing the rest of the episode. Back to the present time, the hearing begins, and we get some great cinematography and editing of Jimmy and Kim getting ready and going to the court while the prosecution's leading statement plays. And Kim's leading statement is great as well. Howard goes up as a witness and explains his side of the story, then Chuck's tape is played for the bar to hear while Chuck gets to the court. Before Chuck gets there though, he bumps into this guy named Huel, which doesn't lead to anything later on. Anyways, Chuck begins to testify against Jimmy, and suddenly Rebecca fucking walks into the room leaving Chuck in shock. Chuck needs a break after this to talk to Rebecca, and she tells him that Jimmy told her about his EHS, which just adds to this insane scene. Chuck tells Rebecca to stay so she can see the truth of all of this, but that quickly backfires. When the hearing resumes, it's Jimmy's turn to ask Chuck some questions. Most of these are about his EHS and the state of his house at the time of the tape being recorded. These questions seem strange at first, until Jimmy reveals that he has his phone on him. Chuck is able to read right through Jimmy, or so he thinks, and takes his phone from Jimmy to reveal that there's no battery in there. Everybody seems disappointed in Jimmy, and it looks like an easy win for Chuck, until Jimmy says,
"What do I have to do to prove it to you?"
I don't know, Chuck. Could you reach into your breast pocket and tell me what's there?
What now?
As insane of a reveal as this is, the prosecutor doesn't seem too happy about this and points out that even if Chuck was mentally ill, this wouldn't affect anything. This triggers Chuck to go on his insane
This chicanery?
rant, which is probably the most iconic and quotable scene of the entire show. It's not a coincidence that this was only my second time watching the show and I still knew half the speech by heart. Jimmy outsmarting Chuck shows a lot of the Saul Goodman that we haven't really got to see yet, and it's so satisfying seeing Chuck finally go down. Chuck's speech convinces the bar that he does really hate Jimmy, and that he was falsely accusing Jimmy of swapping the Mesa Verde files, which ends up giving Jimmy the minimum sentence he could have received, which is a year of disbarment and a fine, although we don't learn that till the next episode. Back to Chuck's rant, I didn't even talk about the incredible acting from Michael McKean, and the amazing cinematography. Just a perfect scene all around, and a perfect episode. Number 1, Saul Gone. I know this is the second time I've put the series finale as the best episode, but blame that on the writers of these shows and not me, because they've done it again. This isn't just the perfect finale for Better Call Saul, but the perfect finale of the entire Breaking Bad universe. If there were to be another spin-off show, I definitely wouldn't complain, but if this is it, I'm completely satisfied. Every single scene, every single shot, every single aspect of this episode is just perfect. Let's start with the cold open, which is a flashback to Bagman, and it shows Jimmy and Mike finding a pool of water and Jimmy instantly going to drink as much as he can. They sit down and Jimmy asks Mike a question. What would you do with the time machine? Mike says he would go back to when he took his first bribe, and when he asks Jimmy what he would do, he responds with an answer that would make him a trillionaire. Mike asks him if there would be anything he would change, which makes Jimmy get up and continue walking. Mike and Jimmy's scenes are always amazing, and I think this is a great final scene for them, and Mike in general. Well, back to Gene. He flees to his house, gets his box, then jumps out of his window and runs through a tunnel, but there are police at the other side, so he jumps in a trash can to try to save himself. But he gets caught, which isn't nearly as satisfying as Walt getting caught, but still a great scene. Jimmy gets locked in a room and has a mental breakdown, but he sees something about a lawyer written on the wall, and he starts dying of laughter, which seems very concerning at first, until he calls none other than Bill Oakley and asks him to be his lawyer, which is admittedly very funny. Then we get the scene of the meeting between Saul and Bill and the DA and Marie. Yes, Marie, like Hank's wife. As much as I hate Marie in Breaking Bad, seeing her here is so great, and it makes the scene in episodes so much sadder. I already had Howard's death to think about, and now you're reminding me of Hank again. This scene is honestly one of the best in the entire show. Marie's monologue is incredible, and then Saul's is even better. I'd say it's the best scene in the whole Breaking Bad universe. That still goes to the fight scene in Ozymandias, but it's definitely up there. This scene is the climax of the episode, and the perfect conclusion to Saul.
The name's McGill. I'm James McGill.
I mean Jimmy's character, and the show in general. Saul was able to make up some BS by telling Oakley that he had some info that could lead to good things for him, but bad things for Kim. And he says this in front of a police officer, so he informs the DA. And the DA then informs Kim, and Kim yet again flies out to see the case. Saul decides to interrupt the case basically as soon as it starts so he can tell the court everything, and that's exactly what he does. First he reveals that he fed the DA some bullshit about Kim just so she could get to the case and hear what he's about to say. Then he says everything. He tells the story of Walt and Jesse bringing him out to the desert again, but he changes one thing about his story that he didn't say when talking to the DA, and it's that Saul decided to completely go for Walt's business and help distribute the meth because of the amount of money that he would make, not because he was scared of Walt. And he says his famous,
Fact is, Walter White couldn't have done it without me.
Then he keeps fucking going, talking about Howard and Chuck, and at this point it's very clear what he's doing. He's not just confessing to the court all the crimes he committed, he's finally admitting to all the wrongdoings that he's done throughout his life. Now all the people that hate on the first few seasons of Better Call Saul have no excuse, because everything that happened, every single component, was completely necessary in this very episode, and this very scene being able to happen, and for it to be as perfect as it is. Saul Jimmy sits down, looks at Kim, and the scene ends. This really could have been the final scene and I would have been perfectly fine with that, but we do get some more closure. But before that, there's another flashback to right before the events of Better Call Saul, where Jimmy is shown bringing the groceries in for Chuck. It's great to see Chuck back, and while it's probably my least favorite flashback of the episode, it's still very good. The next scene is Jimmy being on a bus that's going to prison, and he gets recognized on the bus as Better Call Saul. And all of the scene of the entire Breaking Bad universe, of course, had to be Jimmy and Kim smoking a cigarette in jail. Whether you want to admit it or not, Better Call Saul is really a love story, so Jimmy and Kim's relationship needed that proper closure, and it got it. especially with the final shot of the episode, where Jimmy does a pointed gun gesture at Kim, like she did years ago, and they share one last look while Jimmy is in a prison yard and Kim isn't, and she walks away. Like I said, I don't think that this is as good as Felina, but that wasn't expected, because Saul Gone is the perfect finale for Better Call Saul, and Felina is the perfect finale for Breaking Bad. Better Call Saul was never based on action, so having a finale where there's absolutely no action in all stories is so fitting, and that's why Felina is so perfect for Breaking Bad, because it's basically the opposite. The perfect conclusion to not just one of the best fictional characters, not just one of the best television shows, but one of the best fictional universes. And you're welcome, Mr. White 69419. All right. Thank you all for watching the video. I'm gonna have some stuff to say after I do this top 10 thing. But as promised, I am doing a top 10 Breaking Bad universe characters list at the end of this. In my Breaking Bad video, I did the top 10 Breaking Bad characters. Now we're combining Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul. Obviously, again, it's like Breaking Bad specific characters. I won't have much to say about them because I already talked about them in the Breaking Bad video, but I'm still putting them in the list. Number 10, we have Tuco. I think it's kind of crazy how Tuco, you know, he was in like 6 episodes total in this whole universe. He's in 4 in Breaking Bad and 2 in Better Call Saul, and he still manages to make it onto the list. That's crazy to me. I mean, if we're being honest, it's still because of Breaking Bad. I mean, I loved his cameos in Better Call Saul, but I mean, they didn't add much to his score here. He would be here either way if he wasn't in Better Call Saul or not. All right, number 9, we have Nacho. Some people probably want Nacho higher, but I think this is a very good spot for Nacho. I think, you know, Nacho, again, he's one of the most tragic characters in the show. Like, it's, how can you not sympathize with Nacho? You know what I mean? Like, even though he's done bad, he just wants out of the game, and he can't get out of the game, and his dad, it's just a really sad, like, dynamic. I love Nacho in season 6, especially like those last 3 episodes. He finally gets his time to shine, because, you know, as much as Nacho has been like one of the main characters throughout the whole show, it's like he's always been like a number 2 to like Mike or Gus or like whoever, right? In season 6, like those first few episodes where he is just about to die, like he's just on the run, it's just awesome. I love seeing that stuff. Also, his actor is amazing and seems like a really cool guy as well. I mean, all the actors seem great. Nacho's great. Number 9, Nacho. Number 8, I have Kim. Again, some people would probably want Kim higher, but if we're doing a whole universe ranking, come on. I mean, there's too many top tier characters for me to put Kim in like the top 5 or something. But very obviously the best female character in the Breaking Bad universe. I don't want to sound like an incel or like sexist when I'm like saying that, but like, don't blame me, bro. Blame the writers for making a bunch of unlikable female characters like fucking Lydia and Marie. Like that's not my fault. No, Kim's incredible, easily one of the best in the whole universe. There's not like any point in the show where I like don't like Kim. Like there's times of like higher up characters like Jimmy where there's times I get annoyed with Jimmy. There's times I get annoyed with Walt. There's times I got annoyed with, you know, like Gus. But Kim, you never get annoyed with her. Everyone always loves Kim from front to back. She's just an incredible character, man. She's so good. Mainly why she's not higher. She usually doesn't get too much of the spotlight. It's mostly usually Jimmy, but when she does get the spotlight, incredible. So yeah, Kim number 8. Number 7, I have Gus. You might notice that Gus is a lot lower here than he was in my Breaking Bad one. Obviously now that we're accounting everything, but honestly Gus did drop a little bit, mainly just because like in Better Call Saul, Better Call Saul didn't make his character worse. That's not what I'm trying to say, but I feel like Better Call Saul, it's kind of like what I was saying with Tuco, but it's like more like extreme this time. Better Call Saul doesn't like make me like or dislike his character more. Better Call Saul would not be the same without Gus, but like it doesn't add or subtract from his like ranking or like rating for me. Like, I think he's, like, better. Breaking Bad is where he shines, and then Better Call Saul, he's kind of just, he's there, right? He's important. Don't get me wrong. He's very important, but he's, like I said earlier, like, the main thing about Gus that I loved in season 4 of Breaking Bad, like, especially, he was scary, bro. Like, he was fucking scary. Like, it's, like, everyone always talks about how scary Walt was in season 5. The only reason Walt is even scary in season 5 is because how scary Gus was in season 4. And when Gus is like a main character, like he's more of a protagonist in Better Call Saul than he is antagonist. Gus, like being a protagonist, how can he be scary if he's a protagonist? You know what I mean? So like I don't know. I'm not like a huge fan of his character in Better Call Saul. Not to say it's not good or anything. It's just like, you know, I don't think it adds too much. But yeah, no, I mean, Gus, Breaking Bad, just incredible in Breaking Bad. Easily one of the best characters in that show. Oh, number 6, we have Lalo. Again, I know people will definitely be pissed I don't have Lalo in my top 5, but the fact that he's in probably like not even 20 episodes of this whole like universe that has what, like 125 episodes, right? He's in like not even 20 of those, and the fact he's still number 6, I think that says something, so I don't think anybody should be complaining about that. He single-handedly carries the fucking show from late season 4 to mid season 6. Like that whole, like, that's my favorite part of the show. Like, in my opinion, that's the best part of the show. Lalo being there, I don't know, coincidence? I think not, you know what I mean? Like, Lalo is just so fucking good. He changes the whole plot of everything, especially since he comes in the show so late, and he's able to just fuck everything up. Like, it's just incredible. I love Lalo. Lalo is just, to be honest, like, I remember, like, when I watched Breaking Bad, I was like, yo, we need a Gus spinoff. If they were to make a spinoff, another spinoff, come on, it has to be Lalo. I don't know who the fuck else it would be, basically. I mean, I know he's like dead, so they'd probably have to get like a younger actor if it was like a prequel or whatever, but Lalo spinoff would be crazy. I love Lalo. Again, his actor, phenomenal. Number 5, we have Hank. I don't really have much to say about Hank. I already talked about it in the Breaking Bad one. I know, again, you might notice Hank is higher than Gus was. It's not because of Better Call Saul that he was in. I just like kind of changed my mind. I think Hank's better than Gus now. So the one thing I can say, I love his cameos in I think it's episodes 3 and 4 of season 5. Great cameos there. It's so cool to see him and Gomi there. Not like that like adds to his character or anything. It's just cool cameos. Number 3, Jesse. Again, there's not much to say besides I really loved his cameos in season 6. It does not add to his character because they're just like 2 scenes, but it's so awesome to see. But just go to my Breaking Bad video for my Jesse thoughts. Number 2, we have Saul/Walt. What the fuck? Number 2, we have I can't talk. Number 2, we have Saul/Jimmy/Gene/Victor with the K. I mean, I think he's the best written character, to be honest, in the whole universe. He's just like, God, what do I even say? I mean, the whole show's about him. Oh, I just realized I skipped number 4. Fuck. God damn it. I'm sorry. This is a mess. Number 4 is Mike. Yeah, nobody was actually mad in my last video when I didn't put Mike in the top 5. Now Mike's in the top 5. I mean, how can you not have Mike in the top 5 for the whole universe? Better Call Saul carries his character so hard. Like, I love him in Breaking Bad, but I don't understand how he could, like, be that high up. Easily is, like, one of the best characters in the whole universe, in Better Call Saul in general. He carries the first few seasons for me, especially season 1. Like, his season 1 scenes are amazing. I love his whole thing with Price, Nacho, everything. I mean, he's the second protagonist of the show. Love Mike. Number 4. Already said number 3. Number 2, Saul. I mean, yeah, again, like, this whole show is about him, so, like, I don't really have much to say. I think he has the perfect ending in Saul Gone. I think everything's wrapped up perfectly. Him getting arrested was perfect, you know, everything perfect about his character. And then number 1, Walt. Again, only thing I could say, loved his cameos in late season 6. So yeah, that is the character ranking. Now I think I'm just gonna put some like comments from the last video on screen, you know, just to thank everyone that supported the video. I just want to say I'm just gonna have like some yap session. If you're like planning on still watching my channel after this, then listen to this if you want. If you're just watching this and you're not going to subscribe, just leave now. Yeah, I just want to thank everyone for the support on the last video. Whether this video does good or not, I don't really care, because like that last video like blew away expectations, you know. Like, I had a feeling it would do well. It would definitely be one of my more popular videos, because I mean, like, there have been people to rank all the Breaking Bad episodes, but like, you know, not like an hour and a half long video with like everything scripted and everything. It's a big video, and I know there's lots of people that want to watch that, so I thank you everyone for the support. I got some hate comments, I won't lie, and I support any comments. All right, hate me all you want, tell me to kill myself, like I don't care, bro. Just anybody commenting, I appreciate. And obviously I appreciate the support. I mean, there were some really nice comments in that video. Criticize me all you want, constructive criticism. Listen, I'll listen to everything I can, right? I try to improve every video. Honestly, I think this video is probably better than the Breaking Bad one. I tried to do my narrations better. The script is 10,000 more words, so I definitely wrote more. So yeah, thank you all. I mean, like, I've been doing YouTube since I was a fucking little kid. I've seriously been doing it for like, what, I want to say like 4 years now. 3-4 years now, and I've barely had any growth. In those 4 years, I gained maybe a little bit more than 100 subs, right? And then the Breaking Bad video comes out, and like I gain 100 subs in a month. So like that's huge for me. So I really appreciate all of you for that. If you like this kind of documentary style thing, I have a couple other videos like this. I have one that's unlisted I did in 2021. It sucks. I wouldn't go back to that. I have one that I did, it came out early 2023, about a Minecraft server that I used to be on, Chef SMP. It's just the whole history of the entire server. There's definitely like certain clips that I play for like way too long. Like there was like one clip of like a court case we did in there I played for like 17 minutes. So I would just skip those clips, but besides that, it's a decent video. So I'd recommend that. And then I did a sequel to that video, which shows some events after that happened. It's an hour long. There is one clip for 10 minutes, but I think it is necessary. It's much better edited. Like the first one's mainly just like a picture montage. The second one, it's I don't know, it's a lot better edited to me. It actually relates to Breaking Bad because like the actions I did on the server actually like are kind of like the Breaking Bad, what happened in Breaking Bad. If you're interested, you don't have to watch the first one to see that one. It's an hour less. That one's 1 hour long. The first one's 2 hours long. So if you want to watch those, I'll leave links in the description. Maybe I'll put it in the egg card. Yeah, the first one's not necessary to see the second one. And then then the next big video day after that was Breaking Bad. Now I'm doing Better Call Saul. The next one I want to do, I want to do another ranking, but it's not going to be about Breaking Bad or Better Call Saul. I'm taking a break from this shit. It's going to be about Kanye. So if you're a Kanye fan, I guess get ready for that. I'm going to be, should I reveal it? Yeah, I'll just reveal it. I'm going to rank every Kanye verse that he's ever done, because obviously, like, if you listen to Kanye, he mostly does shit for, I mean, like, a lot of people love him for just, like, the music overall and, like, the production. And not saying his lyrics are terrible. I mean, they kind of are now. But overall, they're not terrible. But it's not the thing people go to Kanye for, let's be honest. So I think it would just be cool, unique, to go through all of his verses and rank all of those. So that's going to be a big video. Hopefully that will come out September, early September, like around, like, just right before school comes back. Now, just for this channel, I just want to, like, say I know Breaking Bad video was very big for the channel, gained me a lot of subs. This probably will be pretty big, might gain me some subs too. So I will continue to make the videos that I was always making, which are like gaming videos. I do let's plays, I do solo let's plays, I do let's plays with my friends. Yeah, so currently I have a solo let's play of BTD 3, Bloons Tower Defense 3 going on, if you're interested in that. I also currently have a multiplayer let's play going on with my friends, 3 of my friends. We're playing Castle Crashers. There's a few more episodes of that to come out. And then I have a let's play of Left 4 Dead that finished last year, but all those videos are out. We're gonna do Left 4 Dead 2 hopefully starting this year, sometime, maybe next year, I don't know. For other videos, I do tier lists a lot. So if you're interested in tier lists, I have some Breaking Bad tier lists. I do tier lists about music. I do tier lists about games, music, games, and shows, television. That's mostly the stuff I do on this channel. I have plush videos too. Whether you think that shit is childish or not, whatever. I mean, like I did say in my comments, I'm 5 years old, so, you know, makes sense. But not all of them are like very childish. There's some dark jokes in some of them. I'm not trying to be like, you know, SML and get like demonetized and all that shit, so I'm not like cursing or anything in them, but you know, there's some of them are a little dark. But I don't know, I think they're funny. If you don't want to watch those, don't. But I will be uploading a lot of those during the summer, you know, now that I could be like viewing my friends a lot. I think they're funny, but, you know, obviously I get if you don't want to watch that shit. That's mainly it for my main channel. I do some like one-off videos sometimes. Like I did a video of reacting to Metastasis with the annoying guy from the last video that everyone hated. I mean, you know, I won't usually do videos like that, but there's occasional ones, like made my friend listen to a whole lot of Red by Playboy Cardi. Like that's not one that I'll do a lot. They're good videos. They're just like kind of one-off things, but, you know, I enjoy them. I enjoy to make them. They're good videos in my opinion. Now for my other channel, The Odyssey. I'm sorry I'm yapping so much. Listen, I told you guys you don't have to listen to this shit, right? The Odyssey is my group channel. I have it with 4 of my friends. Yes, one of them is the guy that everyone hated from the last video. He has his own series, and he's usually in the group, like the group videos. So there's group videos. We do 2 of those a month. We're very behind right now because, you know, school is just kind of kicking everyone's asses and whatever, and I was also just working on this video nonstop. But now that summer's in and this video is done, there's gonna be 4+ uploads a week on that channel. There's gonna be 2 from me, 2 from Foxtail / Gavin. He's gonna be uploading 2 a week, and then Matthew, who was the guy everyone hated, and my friend Nick, they will, you know, they have videos coming out whenever. And then my other friend Jack, he doesn't edit, but he's a part of the channel. He's in the videos. So yeah, I have my own series. Me and Matthew, we have a tier list series. My friend Nick has his own series. My friend Gavin has his own series. And then we have shorts, and then we have group channel videos. We call them podcasts. They're not, occasionally they're podcasts, but usually they're just either gaming videos or just like challenges or whatever. They're entertaining. I think they're very good videos. It's mostly me editing them now. Gavin still has a few to edit, but listen, if you like gaming, if you like music, again, there's some Breaking Bad videos on there too, a couple. Yeah, I recommend the channel. I'm trying to hit 200 subs on there. I work a lot on that channel. So yeah, we're trying to make the videos better and better as time goes on. So if you're interested in, you know, like I said, music, just music, gaming, and kind of just like group channel videos with friends. You know, we have like a who can make a better song in 1 hour video. We have, as much as some of you guys hated Matthew in the last video, he did a video for a series playing the Breaking Bad tycoon on Roblox, and I think it's a very funny video. If you guys hate it, then I don't know, but I still recommend the video. So like we did YouTube Shorts bingo, we did a top 5 favorite video games of all time, an actual podcast, like the first time in years. You know, we just got some miscellaneous shit too, like best candy bracket, that was for my series. We have a lot of content there. There's gonna be a lot of content there. I'm probably gonna be uploading twice a week on my channel as well. So if for some reason I'm the only guy that you like out of all of these guys, then you will at least get 4 uploads from me a week. You'll get 2 on this channel from me that I at least edited. There will still be my friends in those videos, and then 2 on this channel. So yeah, I know I've been yapping for probably like 15 minutes by now. I'll try to cut out as much of this as possible. But yeah, again, thank you everyone for supporting the last video. Thank you for anyone watching this right now. If you made it here, if you're actually listening to any of the shit, I doubt anyone's actually listening to this, but if you are, thank you. Hope you stay for more content. Hope you enjoy it, and yeah, thanks for your support.